The corporate gym fell silent as the janitor caught the CEO's kick mid-air, a move that shouldn't have been possible. Ava Carter, black belt and tech mogul, found herself frozen, staring into eyes that held decades of combat experience. "Who are you?" she whispered. Before today, Ethan Cole was invisible, just the quiet man who mopped floors after hours. But in 30 seconds, he dismantled everything the twin CEOs thought they knew about power. Stay until the end to discover his secret, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the floor-to-ceiling windows of Carter Dynamics Executive Fitness Center, a temple of chrome and ambition perched on the 42nd floor of downtown Seattle's newest skyscraper. The space reeked of money and privilege, Peloton bikes arranged like soldiers, a juice bar stocked with organic everything, and mirrors so pristine they could double as crystal. This wasn't just a gym, it was a statement, a declaration that the people who worked here were winners, achievers, the kind of individuals who conquered their bodies before conquering markets. Ava Carter stood before one of those mirrors, her white GI crisp enough to cut paper, black belt knotted with the precision of someone who'd tied it 1,000 times. She moved through her kata with fluid grace, each punch snapping the air, each stance rooted like ancient trees. Beside her, an identical reflection moved in perfect synchronization, her twin sister, Elise, matching her step for step, breath for breath. They'd been doing this since they were 7 years old. The Carter twins. Ava and Elise, born 4 minutes apart, built from the same genetic blueprint, sculpted by the same demanding parents who believed excellence wasn't optional. Their father, a ruthless venture capitalist, had enrolled them in Shotokan karate the moment they could walk steady. "Life's a fight," he'd told them over breakfast one Saturday morning, orange juice in crystal glasses, the Wall Street Journal folded beside his plate. Better learn how to win it. And win they had. Straight A students who became Harvard Business School graduates. Black belts by 16, co-founders of Carter Dynamics by 25. Now, at 33, they ran a tech empire worth $400 million, specializing in AI-driven logistics software that Fortune 500 companies paid premium prices to license. They had matching corner offices, matching Teslas in the parking garage, and matching reputations as the youngest, sharpest, most formidable women in Seattle's tech scene. "5 more minutes," Ava said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. She transitioned into a spinning back kick, her heel cutting through space where an imaginary opponent's head would be. "Then we need to review the tournament brackets." "Already done," Elise replied, dropping into a deep stance. 43 employees signed up, marketing teams making it into content. Charity angle plays well with investors. The annual Carter Dynamics martial arts tournament had become something of a company tradition. What started 3 years ago as a casual sparring session had evolved into a full-blown event, complete with professional refs, a live stream, and all proceeds going to a youth athletics program in Tacoma. It was good PR, sure, but it was also deeply personal for the twins. This was their world, their domain, the place where intellectual prowess met physical dominance. "Channel 7 wants an interview," Elise continued, moving through a series of knife-hand strikes. "About women in tech, martial arts, leadership synergy, the usual narrative." "Tell them yes, but after we win," Ava grinned, that competitive spark lighting her green eyes. "Let's give them something to really talk about." They'd never lost. Not once. 3 years running, the Carter twins had dominated every tournament bracket, every challenge match, every exhibition. Some employees had stopped entering altogether, intimidated by the sheer skill gap. Others kept trying, kept training, kept hoping that maybe this year would be different. It never was. The gym door whispered open on expensive hinges. Neither twin looked up immediately. They were deep in their routine, focused, centered, breathing synchronized with movement. But in the mirror's reflection, a figure entered carrying a yellow mop bucket on wheels, the kind with a ringer attachment that squeaked slightly. Gray coveralls, work boots worn soft at the toes, a maintenance badge clipped to the chest pocket. Ethan Cole, the janitor. He'd been with the company for 8 months now, hired through the building's contracted cleaning service. The twins had seen him countless times, always in the periphery, always quiet, always working. He emptied trash bins during board meetings, cleaned the executive kitchen after catered lunches, mopped the marble lobby before dawn. Invisible labor performed by an invisible man, the kind of person executives looked through rather than at. Ava had spoken to him exactly twice. Once to ask if he could clean the gym earlier in the morning, before her workout. Once to mention that someone had spilled coffee in the women's restroom. He'd nodded both times, said yes, ma'am, in a voice barely above a whisper, and handled it. Efficient. Forgettable. Elise had never spoken to him at all. He pushed the mop bucket toward the far corner now, moving with that same quiet efficiency, those same economical movements. The twins continued their kata, pivoting through a complex combination that required perfect timing: block, strike, sweep, reverse punch. They'd done it so many times their bodies executed the movements automatically, muscle memory encoded into every fiber. The mop made soft swishing sounds against the rubber flooring. Ethan worked methodically, starting at the edges of the room, staying out of the way. He'd learned the patterns of the executive floor over 8 months. Who came in early, who stayed late, which offices needed attention, and which preferred to be left alone. The Carter twins worked out between 6 and 7:30 every Tuesday and Thursday. He usually waited until they left. But today the gym had been used late last night for a corporate mixer, and there were spills that needed addressing before the tournament setup crew arrived at noon. So he worked quietly, respectfully, invisibly. "Hey!" Ava's voice cut across the space, casual but carrying. She'd finished the kata and was stretching now, one leg extended onto a ballet bar mounted to the wall. "You're the janitor, right?" Ethan paused mid-swipe, looked up. "Yes, ma'am. Ethan Cole." "Ethan." She rolled the name around like she was testing it. "You been watching us?" "Just working, ma'am." His voice was calm, neutral, the practiced tone of someone who'd learned not to draw attention, trying to stay out of your way. No, it's fine." Elise joined her sister at the bar, mirroring her stretch. "Actually, question, you know anything about martial arts?" Ethan's expression didn't change. "A little." "A little?" Ava grinned, that competitive gleam intensifying. "Like, you took a class once, or something like that?" The twins exchanged a glance. That wordless communication that came from sharing a womb, sharing a childhood, sharing everything. There was mischief in that glance. Opportunity. The tournament was today, and they were feeling good, feeling confident, feeling like showing off just a little. "You should join," Elise said, making it sound spontaneous even though the idea was already crystallizing between them. "The tournament. This afternoon." Ethan shook his head gently. "I appreciate it, but I'm working." "We'll get you coverage." Ava pulled her leg higher, demonstrating flexibility that would make a gymnast jealous. "Come on. It's for charity. Youth athletics program. Kids who can't afford equipment. Lessons. Every entry fee goes straight to them." "I'm sure you two don't need another competitor. Actually, we're a bit short." Elise leaned into her stretch, casual as discussing lunch plans. "A few people dropped out last minute, and honestly, it'd be fun. We could use some fresh sparring." Fun. The word hung there, loaded with subtext neither twin was quite saying aloud. They weren't being malicious, not really, just confident, maybe overconfident. They'd beaten software engineers who trained on weekends, marketing directors who took kickboxing classes, a finance VP who'd studied judo in college. What was one more? And there was something appealing about the optics, wasn't there? The CEOs who didn't just dominate the boardroom but connected with every level of their company, inclusive, down to earth. The kind of leaders who'd spar with the janitor and probably win graciously, making him feel welcomed even in defeat. Ethan set the mop in the bucket, straightened slowly. He was taller than he looked when hunched over cleaning, maybe 6'1", lean build under those coveralls. His face was weathered in a way that spoke of sun and wind, lines at the corners of his eyes that could have been from smiling or squinting at distant horizons. His hair was mostly gray, cut military short. His hands, resting at his sides, were calloused and scarred in ways that didn't come from pushing mop buckets. "I wouldn't want to take a spot from someone who's been training," he said quietly. "Oh, don't worry about that," Ava waved dismissively. "We're not looking for professionals, just people who want to try, challenge themselves. And the entry fee is only $50, all for the kids." Ethan studied them for a long moment. There was something in his gaze, something the twins couldn't quite identify. Not fear, not excitement. Something older. Something that had seen things and chosen silence over stories. Tell you what, Elise said, warming to the idea now, her competitive instinct fully engaged. How about a preview? Right now. Just a quick round, nothing serious. If you can land a single clean technique on either of us, we'll waive your entry fee. If not, you sign up anyway and give the $50 to charity. Deal? Yeah, Ava straightened, energized by her sister's proposal. Come on, Ethan, one round. What have you got to lose? What did he have to lose? Ethan considered the question, considered these two young women who'd built an empire and didn't realize they'd never actually been tested. Not really. They'd fought in controlled environments, against opponents who played by rules, who telegraphed their intentions, who stopped when someone tapped out. They were skilled. He could see that in their stances, their balance, their confidence. They'd probably win most fights they entered, collect most trophies they competed for. But they'd never fought for their lives. Never felt the difference between dojo sparring and dirt and blood reality. Never learned that the most dangerous opponent is the one who doesn't look dangerous at all. He could walk away. Should walk away. That's what he'd been doing for 3 years. Walking away, staying quiet, keeping his head down, and his history buried. He'd left that life behind. Left it in the mountains of Afghanistan, in the training compounds of Fort Bragg, in the faces of young soldiers he'd taught to survive what was coming for them. But there was something in the twins' easy confidence that tugged at something old inside him. Not anger, not ego. Just a teacher's instinct that recognized students who needed a lesson they didn't know they needed. All right, he said softly. One round. The gym's energy shifted immediately. Ava clapped her hands once, sharp and delighted. Yes! Okay, let me record this. She pulled out her phone from the pocket of her GI. For the company feed. This is going to be gold. Make sure you get his good side, Elise joked, rolling her shoulders, shaking out her arms. She stepped onto the main mat area, padded flooring designed specifically for martial arts, blue and red sections marking sparring zones. Rules are simple, Ethan. Light contact, control your strikes, tap out if you need to. We're not trying to hurt anyone. Appreciate that, Ethan said. He walked to the edge of the mat, unlaced his work boots, set them aside neatly. Peeled off his coveralls. Underneath he wore simple gray athletic clothes, the kind sold in 3-packs at discount stores. His arms were lean, corded with muscle that came from use rather than vanity. Scars traced his forearms, thin white lines, stories written in scar tissue. Ava positioned herself with her phone, framing the mat. Okay, I'm recording. Elise, try not to destroy him too fast. We need at least 30 seconds of content. Elise grinned, stepping into her fighting stance. Left foot forward, weight balanced, hands up but loose. Tournament ready. Championship form. She'd beaten men twice her size with this stance, this technique, this absolute confidence in her training. Ethan stepped onto the mat and bowed. It was a small gesture, traditional, the kind of thing they'd done 1,000 times in their own training. But something about the way he did it made both twins pause. The bow wasn't ceremonial. It was precise, exact. The kind of movement that came from decades of repetition, from training so deeply embedded, it became instinct. He straightened and settled into a stance that looked almost casual, feet shoulder-width apart, hands at his sides, weight centered. No guard, no obvious preparation. Just standing there, comfortable and calm, like he was waiting for a bus. You sure you want to start like that? Elise asked, circling slightly. I mean, you might want to put your hands up. I'm good, Ethan said. His voice remained quiet, but there was something underneath it now, not threat, not challenge, just certainty. The absolute confidence of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. Elise moved first, a testing jab, fast but controlled, checking his reaction time. Ethan swayed backward an inch, just enough, and her fist cut air. She followed with a low kick, sweeping toward his lead leg. He lifted his foot slightly, let it pass underneath, set it down in exactly the same spot. Okay, not bad, Elise said, her competitive spirit fully engaged now. She accelerated, throwing a combination she'd practiced 10,000 times. Jab, cross, hook, spinning back kick. Tournament-winning sequence. She'd scored knockouts with this combination, collected trophies, made opponents quit. Ethan moved like water. He didn't block in the traditional sense, didn't meet force with force. He just wasn't where her strikes arrived. Slight weight shifts. Minimal movement. Each attack missing by fractions of inches, Elise punching and kicking through space that had contained a human being milliseconds before. It was like fighting smoke, like hitting shadows. What the? Elise reset, breathing harder than she expected. Okay, you've got some moves. Want me to step in? Ava called from behind her phone, filming everything. There was less amusement in her voice now, more focus. No, I've got this. Elise adjusted her approach, moving from external attacks to grappling range. If she couldn't hit him, she'd take him down. She shot in fast, dropping her level, reaching for a double-leg takedown that had worked against bigger, stronger opponents. Get him on the ground, establish position, game over. Ethan's knee came up. Not hard. He pulled it, controlled it, let it just touch her forehead as she came in. A warning tap. A message that said, "You'd be unconscious right now if I'd wanted it." Elise froze, still bent forward, feeling that knee resting against her skull. You okay? Ethan asked, genuine concern in his voice. He stepped back, giving her space. She straightened slowly, face flushed. Not from exertion, from realization. From the sudden, unwelcome understanding that she hadn't been fighting an equal. She'd been fighting someone so far above her level that he was showing restraint, pulling techniques, teaching rather than defeating. How did you... she started. My turn, Ava said, setting her phone down, her competitive fire fully ignited now. If her twin couldn't tag him, she would. They were identical in skill, identical in training. What one couldn't do, the other could. That's how it had always worked. She stepped onto the mat, settling into the same stance as her sister. Elise moved off, still processing what had just happened, still feeling that phantom knee against her forehead. You're fast, Ava said, circling Ethan. Real fast. But everyone's got tells. Everyone telegraphs something. That's true, Ethan agreed. He maintained his casual stance, hands still at his sides. Ava attacked without warning, no prep, no tell, just explosive movement. Side kick aimed at his ribs, then immediately transitioning to a spinning back fist. Different approach than her sister, more deceptive, more willing to sacrifice form for surprise. She'd always been the slightly more unpredictable twin, the one who took risks, who trusted instinct over technique. Ethan redirected the kick with an open palm, gentle but firm, sending her spinning wider than she intended. She recovered quickly, impressively, using the momentum to launch into a jumping round kick. Flashy, athletic. The kind of technique that looked amazing in demonstrations and could actually work against most opponents. He caught her ankle mid-air, just reached up and grabbed it, casual as plucking an apple from a tree, held it there, suspending her in an awkward one-legged balance. She hopped on her standing leg, trying to pull free, trying to figure out how she'd gotten caught. His grip wasn't painful, wasn't even that tight, but it was absolutely immovable. Okay, she said, breathless. Okay, point made. You can... He lowered her foot carefully to the mat, making sure she was stable before releasing. Ava stepped back, chest heaving, staring at him with an expression that had cycled through confusion, frustration, and was landing somewhere near respect. Who the hell are you? I cleaned the building, Ethan said simply. Bullshit. Elise had found her voice again, had moved closer to the mat. Nobody moves like that from a little training. That's professional level stuff. The gym door opened again. Marcus Webb stepped through, Carter Dynamics head of security, a mountain of a man who'd spent 20 years in the Marine Corps before transitioning to corporate protection. He was carrying a protein shake and wearing workout gear, clearly planning to use the gym before his shift started. He saw the scene. The twins on the mat, breathing hard, staring at a man in gray clothes, and almost turned around. Then he actually looked at the man. His protein shake hit the floor, plastic bottle bouncing, chocolate-flavored liquid spreading across expensive tile. Sir, Marcus said, his voice strangled, his entire body snapping to attention like muscle memory had hijacked his nervous system. Sir, I didn't know you were Colonel Cole? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Both twins turned to look at Marcus, then at Ethan, then back at Marcus. The head of security, the man they'd hired specifically because of his Marine Corps background, his combat experience, his unshakable calm, was standing at attention like a recruit facing a general inspection. "Marcus," Ethan said quietly, a note of resignation in his voice. "It's been a while." 17 months, sir. Not since—" Marcus trailed off, seemed to remember where he was. Who was listening? "I didn't recognize you. The civilian clothes, I should have, but it's fine." Ethan's voice carried gentle authority, the kind that eased tension rather than demanded obedience. "I'm retired. Just Ethan now." "Colonel?" Ava's voice cut through the moment, sharp with confusion and dawning realization. "Marcus, what are you talking about? This is Ethan Cole. He's a janitor. He works for the cleaning service." Marcus looked at his employers, then at Ethan, clearly struggling with what to say, what was appropriate, what was even allowed. "Ma'am, with all respect, this is Colonel Ethan Cole. He doesn't just—" Marcus took a breath, trying to organize his thoughts. "He trained half the Special Forces hand-to-hand combat instructors in the U.S. military. He's a legend. Was." Ethan interrupted gently. "Was those things. Different life." The gym had gone completely silent. Ava's phone lay on the floor, still recording, capturing every word. Elise stood frozen at the edge of the mat, her mind racing through the last 8 months, every interaction, every time she'd walked past this man without really seeing him. "The Ethan Cole?" Marcus continued, unable to help himself, the respect and admiration overriding professional discretion. "The one who designed the combatives program? Who trained Delta and SEAL Team 6? Who wrote the manual on—" "Marcus." Ethan's voice remained quiet, but carried an edge now, a subtle command that stopped the security chief mid-sentence. "I left all that behind. I'd appreciate if it stayed in the past." "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." Marcus bent to retrieve his protein shake, movement stiff with embarrassment. I have rounds. Excuse me." He backed toward the door, couldn't quite make himself turn his back on Ethan, and slipped out into the corridor. The door whispered shut behind him. The twins stood in the aftermath, processing, recalculating everything they thought they'd known. "You trained Special Forces?" Elise finally asked, her voice small. "Long time ago." "How long?" 23 years in service, retired 3 years ago." Ethan moved to where he'd left his coveralls, began pulling them back on over his workout clothes. "Different world back then. Different person." Wait. Ava held up her hands, trying to slow down the information avalanche. "You're telling me you've been mopping our floors for 8 months, and you're actually some kind of— what? Military legend? And you never said anything?" "Wasn't relevant to my job. We just tried to fight you." Elise's voice pitched higher with embarrassed realization. "We recorded it. We were going to put it on social media. Oh my God, we were going to—" "You were fine," Ethan said, his tone gentle, non-judgmental. "You're both skilled. Good technique, good discipline. You've clearly trained hard. But not hard enough." Ava said it quietly, staring at the mat like it might offer answers. "Not even close to enough." Ethan finished pulling on his coveralls, started lacing his boots. "Different kinds of training prepare you for different things. Tournament fighting is a sport. Rules, referees, weight classes, controlled environments. What I learned was about survival in places with no rules at all. You can't compare them." "But you did compare them," Elise said. "Just now, on that mat. And we didn't last 30 seconds. "You lasted as long as you needed to." Ethan stood, fully dressed again, back to looking like a maintenance worker. "Long enough to learn something, if you want to." "What's that?" He considered the question, considered these 2 young women who'd built an empire on confidence and had just had that confidence shaken. They could respond 2 ways: with ego, defending their pride, pretending this hadn't happened, or with humility, accepting the lesson and growing from it. The choice would define them more than any tournament victory ever could. "That skill and power aren't the same thing," Ethan said finally, "and that the most dangerous person in any room is usually the one nobody's looking at." He moved toward his mop bucket, ready to return to work, ready to disappear back into invisibility. Wait! Ava's voice stopped him. That's it? You're just going to go back to mopping floors? After this? It's my job. No, I mean... She struggled to articulate what she meant, what she was feeling. You're Colonel Ethan Cole. You train special operations soldiers. And you're working as a janitor? That doesn't make sense. Makes sense to me. Ethan's hand rested on the mop handle, comfortable with the weight of it. I spent 23 years preparing people for violence, teaching them to hurt, to survive, to kill when necessary. I was good at it, maybe too good. And after a while, you look at yourself in the mirror and wonder if that's all you are. A weapon maker, a violence teacher. So you quit? Elise asked. I retired. There's a difference. His eyes grew distant, seeing something beyond the gym's walls. Lost my brother in Kandahar, IED. He was the one who convinced me to enlist in the first place, back when we were kids. After he died, I started asking questions. What was I doing? Who was I helping? What was I building versus what was I destroying? The twins listened, silent now, recognizing that they'd stumbled into something deeper than a sparring match, something more real than corporate competition. I could have taken another command, Ethan continued. Pentagon wanted me in D.C., training the next generation of trainers. Good money, good prestige, good retirement. But I looked at that offer and realized I'd just be perpetuating the same cycle, creating more people like me, teaching more people to fight, and I was tired. Tired of violence, tired of loss, tired of being Colonel Cole. So, you became a janitor, Ava said, not mocking now, trying to understand. I became someone who cleans up messes instead of making them. Someone who helps maintain spaces where people work, create, build things. It's simple. It's honest. It's quiet. He smiled slightly. And nobody bothers you. Nobody asks you to train them to hurt people. Until we did, Elise said softly. Until you did. Silence settled over the gym again, but it was different now. Contemplative rather than shocked. Thoughtful rather than stunned. Ava picked up her phone from the floor, looked at the recording still running. Without hesitation, she deleted it. I'm sorry, we were being arrogant, treating you like entertainment. Like your skills were something for us to test ourselves against. You didn't know. That's not an excuse. Elise moved closer, not crowding, but closing the distance between executive and employee, between different worlds. We should have treated you with respect regardless of your background. That's on us. Ethan studied them both, seeing something shift in their expressions, their postures. Pride transforming into something more valuable. Humility. It was a rare thing in corporate America, in places where image and dominance and never showing weakness became armor that people forgot they were wearing. The tournament, he said suddenly. This afternoon. You two are competing? We were planning to, Ava said, though honestly, after this, I'm not sure I want to. You should. Ethan's voice was firm, not commanding, but encouraging. You've both trained hard. You've got good skills. Don't let one sparring session shake your confidence. Easy for you to say. You didn't get dismantled in under a minute. I've been dismantled plenty of times. Ethan's smile was genuine now, remembering. My first hand-to-hand instructor was a Filipino woman named Rosa Santos. 5'0", 62 years old, taught Kali and Eskrima. I was a cocky 21-year-old Special Forces candidate, all muscles and confidence. She put me on my ass 17 times in our first session. I stopped counting after that. What did you do? I learned, listened, checked my ego at the door, and accepted that I was a beginner facing a master. Best thing that ever happened to my training. He gestured to the mat. This tournament, it's not about proving you're the best. It's about testing yourself, learning, growing. You want to honor all that training you've done? Step onto that mat this afternoon and compete. Not to dominate, to learn. The twins exchanged another glance, that wordless communication flowing between them. Would you? Elise started, then stopped, unsure if she should ask. Would I what? Would you consider helping us train? I mean, not right now, obviously, but maybe... She trailed off, suddenly aware of how presumptuous the request might sound. Sorry, that's probably... I'll think about it, Ethan said, surprising himself with the answer. He'd sworn off teaching, sworn off anything that resembled his old life. But there was something about these two. Their willingness to learn, their ability to set aside ego when confronted with truth. Those were rare qualities, worth cultivating. Really? Ava's eyes lit up. I said I'd think about it. Think. No promises. He gripped the mop handle. Now I need to finish this floor before the tournament crew arrives. You two should probably prepare. He started mopping again, falling back into the rhythm of the work. The simple back-and-forth motion that required no decisions, no strategy, no violence. Just clean water and dirty floors and the satisfaction of making things a little bit better than they were. The twins gathered their things slowly, still processing, still recalibrating their entire understanding of the world and their place in it. As they reached the door, Elise turned back. Ethan? He looked up from his mopping. Thank you. For the lesson, for your honesty. She paused. And for your service. I know that's probably something you've heard a million times, but thank you. He nodded, accepting the gratitude without commentary. Some things didn't need words. After they left, Ethan continued cleaning, working his way across the expensive flooring, removing the scuff marks and water spots and all the small signs of use. The sun had climbed higher now, filling the space with bright light, turning the mirrors into panels of gold. In the reflection, he could see himself. Gray-haired man in coveralls, pushing a mop, looking every bit like what he appeared to be. A janitor. A maintenance worker. Someone forgettable. But underneath the reflection, underneath the coveralls and the gray hair and the 3 years of deliberate invisibility, Colonel Ethan Cole remained. Not gone. Not erased. Just resting. Quiet. Waiting to see if this new life he'd chosen could offer something his old life never had. Peace. The executive washroom on the 42nd floor had heated floors and imported Italian marble, but Ava Carter barely noticed as she splashed cold water on her face. Her reflection stared back. Same green eyes, same sharp features, same person who'd walked into the gym 90 minutes ago. Except everything felt different now, like the world had tilted slightly on its axis and she was still finding her balance. You okay? Elise emerged from one of the stalls, moving to the adjacent sink. Define okay? Ava grabbed a hand towel from the warmed rack, pressed it against her face. I just got schooled by our janitor, a janitor who happens to be Special Forces royalty, and we almost made a social media post about it. Former janitor, probably. Elise began washing her hands with meticulous care, a nervous habit from childhood. There's no way we can just pretend this didn't happen. HR needs to know. Legal needs to know. Hell, the board probably needs to know we've had a military legend mopping our conference rooms. You think he lied on his application? I think he probably didn't volunteer information nobody asked for. Elise dried her hands, staring at her own reflection. The cleaning service does background checks, right? Criminal records, references, the basic stuff. But they're not looking for colonels. They're looking for people who can clean toilets and show up on time. Ava leaned against the counter, processing. Marcus called him a legend, trained half the Special Forces instructors. What does that even mean? Like he's the guy who taught the guys who teach the guys? Something like that. Elise pulled out her phone, typed rapidly. I'm looking him up, Colonel Ethan Cole. There's got to be something online, some record. Maybe we shouldn't. Elise paused mid-search, looked at her twin. What? He clearly doesn't want attention. He left that life, chose to be invisible. And we're about to internet stalk him? We're trying to understand who's been working in our building for 8 months. That's due diligence, not stalking. It's also violating his privacy. Ava straightened, that familiar sense of right and wrong asserting itself. Their father had raised them to be ruthless in business, but their mother, a civil rights attorney before cancer took her when the twins were 19, had instilled something deeper. Respect for dignity. Recognition of choice. He told us what he wanted us to know. The rest is his business. Elise lowered her phone slowly, torn between executive responsibility and human decency. So what do we do? Just go back to normal? Pretend he didn't catch your kick midair like you were moving in slow motion? No, we treat him like we should have been treating him all along, with respect. And if he wants to tell us more, he will. Ava checked her watch, a Cartier their father had given them when Carter Dynamics landed its first major contract. Tournament starts in 5 hours. We need to focus. Can you focus? After that, Ava met her sister's eyes in the mirror, saw the same uncertainty reflected there. They'd built their entire adult lives on confidence, on knowing they were the smartest, toughest, most capable people in any room. That confidence had carried them through Harvard, through startup struggles, through boardroom battles with men twice their age who'd dismissed them until the contracts proved otherwise. And in 30 seconds, a quiet man in coveralls had revealed that confidence for what it partially was: untested assumption. I don't know, Ava admitted quietly, but I'm going to try. 3 floors down, in the Carter Dynamics employee lounge, the tournament had become the only topic of conversation. The space was designed to evoke a tech startup vibe: exposed brick, vintage arcade games, a coffee bar that would make Starbucks jealous. And right now it was packed with staff on their lunch break, all discussing brackets and matchups and last-minute training tips. I'm telling you, the Carter twins are going to sweep again. Derek Chen from product development grabbed a sparkling water from the fridge, twisted it open. They're too good. Nobody else even comes close. Maybe someone should come close. That was Jennifer Martinez, marketing director, stretching her hamstrings against a table. She'd been training specifically for this tournament for 3 months, adding extra kickboxing classes on top of her regular routine. I mean, it's great that our CEOs are badass, but it'd be nice if someone else won for once, just for variety. You volunteering? Derek grinned. I'm trying. Got matched against Ava in the quarterfinals, assuming we both get that far. Jennifer grimaced. Which means I'm probably getting eliminated in the quarterfinals, but at least I'll go down swinging. That's the spirit. Marcus Webb entered the lounge, still looking slightly off balance from his gym encounter. He'd been head of security for 18 months, had developed a reputation as unshakable, the guy who stayed calm during fire drills and medical emergencies, and that, one time, a venture capitalist had gotten drunk at a holiday party and tried to fight a potted plant. But right now he looked distinctly shakeable. Marcus, you okay? Jennifer asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that. Marcus grabbed coffee from the bar, added cream with hands that weren't quite steady. Just got reminded that you never really know who's around you, the invisible people, the ones we don't notice. That's oddly philosophical for a Tuesday morning. Marcus sipped his coffee, chose his words carefully. You ever work with someone for months, see them every day, and then find out they're completely different from who you thought they were? You mean like when we found out Karen from accounting had a secret life as a competitive ballroom dancer? Derek laughed. That was wild. Bigger than that. Marcus set down his cup. More like, finding out the quiet guy in the corner is actually a world-class expert in something you didn't know existed. The conversation paused, people sensing something more serious beneath the vague words. This about someone here? Jennifer asked. Doesn't matter. Marcus forced a smile, shifted back into professional mode. Just a reminder to treat everyone with respect, you know? You never know what people's stories are, what they've done, what they're capable of. He left before anyone could ask follow-up questions, heading back to his rounds, still processing the fact that he'd been sharing an elevator with Colonel Ethan Cole for 18 months without recognizing him. In the Marines, Marcus had been a platoon sergeant, had seen combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, had trained with some of the best fighters the military produced. And the man who taught many of those fighters had been mopping the floor outside Marcus's office. It made him reconsider everything, every time he'd nodded at Ethan in passing, every time he'd handed him a trash bag that needed replacing, every casual interaction that had been one-sided because Marcus had never thought to actually see the person behind the coveralls. In the executive suite, Ava and Elise had returned to their respective offices, trying to focus on work. Emails needed answering, contracts needed reviewing. A conference call with Tokyo was scheduled for 2 o'clock, normal Tuesday operations for a multi-million-dollar company. But normal felt impossible now. Ava sat at her desk, staring at a profit-loss statement without actually reading it, her mind replaying the gym session. The way Ethan had moved, or hadn't moved. That casual stance, hands at his sides, like he was standing in line at a grocery store rather than facing a black belt. And then the effortless defense, the gentle control, The way he'd caught her sister's ankle like plucking a flower. Her phone buzzed. Text from Elise. Did you notice his hands? Ava replied, What about them? Scars. Lots of them. Not from mopping floors. Combat? Probably. Made me wonder what else we don't see. How many other people are walking around with entire lives we know nothing about? Ava set down her phone, looked around her office. Corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound, modern furniture that costs more than most people's cars. Success made visible. Achievement on display. But what if success wasn't always visible? What if the most accomplished people were the ones who chose invisibility? The thought unsettled her in ways she couldn't quite articulate. Her desk phone rang, internal line. She picked up. Ava Carter. Miss Carter, this is Denise from HR. The voice was professional but slightly uncertain. Do you have a moment? There's a situation I wanted to bring to your attention. Ava's stomach tightened. What kind of situation? It's about one of our contracted maintenance staff, Ethan Cole. His supervisor from the cleaning service just called, said there was an incident this morning, something about him being in the gym during your workout session. There was no incident, Denise. He was doing his job. Right, but the supervisor seemed concerned that Mr. Cole might have been inappropriate. She used the word confrontation and wanted to apologize on behalf of the service if he'd been disruptive, or he wasn't disruptive. Ava's voice sharpened with protective instinct she hadn't known she possessed. In fact, he was completely professional. If anything, my sister and I were the ones who interrupted his work. Is there a problem? Silence on the line, the sound of papers shuffling. No problem, exactly, but I'm required to document any reported incidents involving contractors and executives. Policy. Just need to confirm that no hostile interaction occurred. No hostile interaction occurred. Mr. Cole was polite, professional, and accommodating. You can document that. Understood. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Another pause. Though, off the record, his supervisor mentioned you might have been sparring with him. I know that sounds strange, but off the record, Denise, Mr. Cole has an extensive background in martial arts. My sister and I asked if he'd do a quick demonstration. He agreed. It was educational and entirely consensual. Anything else? No, ma'am. Just wanted to make sure everything was okay. After hanging up, Ava immediately called her sister. Elise picked up on the first ring. HR just called me, Ava said without preamble. Ethan's supervisor reported an incident in the gym. Are you kidding me? Elise's frustration crackled through the line. We're the ones who pushed him to spar. We're the ones who... I know, I told HR it was our fault, but this is going to become a thing, Elle. People are going to ask questions. The story's going to spread. And Ethan clearly wants to avoid attention. So what do we do? Ava thought about it. About the man who'd chosen to mop floors instead of command respect, who deliberately made himself invisible because visibility came with expectations he no longer wanted to meet. They could protect that choice. Or they could accidentally destroy it by treating him differently now, by making a big deal out of something he wanted to keep small. We do nothing, Ava decided. We treat him exactly like we should have been treating him before, as a valued member of our team. No special attention, no different behavior. We protect his privacy by not making it a thing. And the tournament? We compete, we focus. We remember what he said about learning versus dominating. Ava looked at the Seattle skyline, gray clouds rolling in from the sound. And maybe we start paying attention to the people we've been overlooking. By mid-afternoon, the corporate gym had been transformed. The main mat area had been expanded, professional-grade tournament mats laid down in interlocking sections. A scoring table had been set up with digital timers and iPads for judges. Folding chairs lined the walls for spectators. Employees who weren't competing but wanted to watch, support their colleagues, make it into an event. The charity aspect was prominently displayed. A banner reading, "Fighting for Kids, all proceeds support youth athletics," hung across one wall, with a running total of entry fees and donations displayed on a screen. They'd already raised $12,000, enough to buy equipment for 2 entire recreation centers in Tacoma. Jennifer Martinez arrived early, dressed in her competition gi, a purple belt knotted at her waist. She'd been studying the brackets obsessively, trying to visualize her path through the tournament. First round against Tom from engineering, she could probably take him. Second round would be tougher, maybe Sarah from finance who'd done judo in college. And then, if she survived that far, the quarterfinals against Ava Carter. You ready? Derek Chen dropped into the chair beside her, already warming up, rolling his shoulders. Ready to get destroyed by our CEO? Absolutely. Jennifer forced a laugh. At least it's for charity. You've been training hard. You might surprise yourself. I might surprise myself by lasting a full minute. Jennifer watched other employees filing in, the nervous energy of competition starting to build. Have you seen her fight? She's like a machine. Perfect technique, perfect timing, perfect everything. Nobody's perfect. The Carter twins come close. Across the gym, Ava and Elise were doing their final preparations, stretching in mirrored synchronization. They'd changed into their competition GIEs, pristine white with the Carter Dynamics logo embroidered on the back, black belts perfectly knotted. To anyone watching, they looked exactly like they always did before tournaments, focused, confident, ready. But internally, both women felt different. That morning's encounter had shaken something loose, dislodged the absolute certainty they'd been carrying. Now, warming up for a tournament they'd won 3 years running, they were questioning things they'd never questioned before. You think he's watching? Elise asked quietly, moving through a slow kata. Who? Ethan. You think he's still in the building? His shift doesn't end until 6. He's probably cleaning the executive conference room or restocking the break rooms or... Ava trailed off, realizing she had no idea what his daily routine actually involved. 8 months of seeing him regularly, and she couldn't describe his job beyond the most basic assumptions. We really have been blind, haven't we? Willfully blind. There's a difference. Elise finished her kata, took a deep breath. We saw what we expected to see. Janitor, maintenance, background scenery. Never occurred to us that people might be more than their job titles. Does that make us bad people? No, just typical people. Everyone does it. Elise grabbed her water bottle, sipped slowly. But maybe we should be better than typical. The tournament director, a professional referee they'd hired from a local martial arts association, stepped to the center of the mat, microphone in hand. The gym quieted, participants and spectators settling into their places. Welcome to the 4th annual Carter Dynamics Charity Martial Arts Tournament. His voice boomed through the space, professional and energetic. We've got 43 competitors today, representing every department of this amazing company. All entry fees and donations go directly to the Tacoma Youth Athletics Foundation, supporting kids who want to train but can't afford equipment or lessons. Applause rippled through the crowd, genuine enthusiasm mixing with nervous anticipation. Rules are simple, the director continued. 2-minute rounds, points scored for clean techniques, punches, kicks, throws, takedowns. Control is mandatory. We're not trying to hurt each other. We're testing skill. Excessive contact means disqualification. Respect your opponent, respect the judges, and let's have a great tournament. More applause. The director consulted his tablet, pulled up the first match. Opening round, Division 1, Tom Brennan versus Jennifer Martinez. Competitors, please take the mat. Jennifer stood, trying to control her breathing, trying to channel all those extra kickboxing classes into confidence. Tom met her at the edge of the mat, a nice guy from engineering, software developer who'd been doing taekwondo for about 2 years. They bowed to each other, to the judges, to the director. Ready? The director asked. Fight! They engaged carefully, both tentative, feeling each other out. Tom threw a testing kick. Jennifer blocked, countered with a punch combination. The crowd cheered, colleagues supporting colleagues, the atmosphere more celebration than competition. From her seat on the sidelines, Ava watched with new eyes. Jennifer was nervous but skilled, her technique solid even if her confidence wavered. Tom was enthusiastic but telegraphed his moves, shoulders tensing before strikes. 2 people testing themselves, pushing past comfort zones, learning. This is what the tournament was supposed to be about, Ava realized. Not domination, not proving superiority, just people challenging themselves, supporting each other, growing together. The round ended, Jennifer won on points, her superior conditioning and slightly better technique making the difference. They hugged after the final bell, both breathing hard, both grinning with the pure joy of effort. That was amazing, Tom told her, loud enough for nearby seats to hear. Your counter game is so much better than last year. You almost got me with that spinning kick. I barely blocked it. They left the mat friends, competitors but not enemies, the best version of what sport could be. The tournament progressed through early rounds. Derek Chen won his match against a woman from legal who'd been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Sarah from finance, the former judo competitor, dismantled her opponent with a beautiful hip throw that made the judges smile. Each match told a story. Training met opportunity, skill met heart, fear met courage. And then the director called. Division 1. Quarterfinal, Jennifer Martinez versus Ava Carter. The gym's energy shifted immediately. This was what people had been waiting for, the first appearance of one of the CEOs. Jennifer stood slowly, visibly steeling herself, knowing she was about to face someone on a completely different level. Ava rose from her seat, tried to find the right mindset, the right approach. Learning versus dominating, she reminded herself. This isn't about proving I'm better, it's about helping her learn. They met at the center of the mat, bowed. Up close, Ava could see the anxiety in Jennifer's eyes, the way her jaw was clenched too tight, her shoulders riding high with tension, classic signs of someone expecting to lose, fighting against that expectation. Breathe, Ava said quietly, just between them. You've trained for this. Trust your training. Jennifer blinked, surprised by the encouragement. You're supposed to be intimidating me. Why? You're intimidating yourself enough already. Ava smiled, genuine warmth replacing her usual competitive intensity. Let's have a good match. Show me what you've got. The director signaled. They began. Ava had intended to take it easy, to give Jennifer opportunities to showcase her skills, to make it educational rather than embarrassing. But something shifted as they engaged. Jennifer, freed from some of her paralyzing anxiety by Ava's words, started fighting more naturally. Her kicks had decent power. Her combinations showed real thought. She wasn't winning, wasn't going to win, but she was competing, really competing, making Ava work. The crowd sensed it too, their cheers growing louder. Jennifer scored a point with a clean body kick that slipped through Ava's guard. Another point with a punch combination that, while blocked, demonstrated excellent form. She was losing 7-3, but those 3 points felt like victories. Ava found herself enjoying the match, not because she was dominating, but because Jennifer was teaching her something, showing her that skill could exist at every level, that someone didn't need to be special forces to be worthy of respect. Every person who stepped on this mat had trained, had sacrificed, had pushed themselves. That deserved recognition. The timer buzzed. Match over. Ava won 9-4, advancing to semifinals. But as they bowed to each other, Jennifer was smiling, not crushed. She'd done better than she'd hoped, had pushed harder than she'd expected, had earned those 4 points against a CEO and black belt. Thank you, Jennifer said, breathing hard but energized. Thank you. You were great, seriously. Ava meant it. That body kick in the first minute? I didn't see it coming. You've got real talent. Jennifer left the mat looking taller somehow, like the match had added inches to her spine. Elise won her quarterfinal match even more decisively, but Ava noticed her twin was more measured too, more controlled. Less about overwhelming her opponent and more about testing, teaching, engaging. They were both learning, both changing. The semifinals put Ava against Derek Chen and Elise against Sarah from finance. The matches were more competitive. Both Derek and Sarah had real skill, years of training, legitimate technique. Derek actually managed to take Ava to the mat with a surprise takedown, though she reversed it immediately and ended up winning on points. Sarah gave Elise trouble with her judo background, threatening throws that made Elise adjust her stance, her strategy, her approach. The finals would be the same as always, the Carter twins facing each other. But this time it felt different. Less like a coronation, more like a genuine test. They prepared on opposite sides of the mat, stretching, breathing, centering themselves. The gym was packed now. Word had spread through the building that the finals were happening, and employees had abandoned their desks to watch. Even some people from other companies in the building had wandered in, drawn by the energy. The director called them to the center. They bowed, to each other, to the judges, to the audience. Twin sisters who'd been competing against each other since childhood, who knew each other's techniques like they knew their own, who'd never held back because neither wanted the other's mercy. "Ready?" the director asked. They nodded. "Fight!" They engaged with a fury that surprised even themselves. No holding back, no teaching mode, just pure competition, skill against skill, will against will. Ava threw combinations she'd been working on for months. Elise countered with angles she'd been studying. They moved around the mat like mirror images, like choreographed dance, except neither knew the other's next move and both were trying to win. The crowd roared. Judges leaned forward. This was what peak performance looked like. Two equally matched competitors pushing each other to absolute limits. First round ended 3-3, dead tie. They reset, breathing hard, eyes locked. Something passed between them. Not words, not even conscious thought. Just recognition. They were good. Really good. Not Ethan Cole good, maybe never would be, but good enough to have built something worth being proud of. Good enough to honor all those hours of training, all those years of discipline. Second round was even more intense. Ava scored with a spinning back kick. Elise answered with a perfect counterpunch. They traded points like punches, neither giving ground, neither accepting defeat. The timer ticked down, 30 seconds, 20, 10. Ava lunged for a final combination, something risky but potentially match-winning. Elise read it, deflected, caught her sister slightly off balance, and swept her legs. Ava hit the mat, clean takedown, 3 points. Buzzer. Elise won 8-7. The gym exploded with applause. Both twins collapsed onto the mat, breathing hard, grinning at each other with exhausted respect. After 3 years of Ava winning their finals matches, Elise had finally broken through. Not because Ava had gone easy, because Elise had earned it. They helped each other up, hugged hard. "About damn time," Ava gasped into her sister's shoulder. "Took me long enough," Elise agreed. The trophy ceremony was warm and genuine. Elise accepted the first-place medal, Ava the second place, and Jennifer Martinez got third after winning the consolation bracket. The crowd cheered each winner, and the director announced the final fundraising total, $19,300 for the Tacoma Youth Athletics Foundation. As the gym began clearing out, people heading home or back to work, Ava found herself looking around, searching, wondering if Ethan had watched any of it, if he'd seen them compete, if he'd noticed the changes they'd tried to make in their approach. But there was no sign of him. Just the lingering scent of industrial floor cleaner and the knowledge that somewhere in this building, a legend was mopping floors and choosing invisibility over recognition. "We should find him," Elise said quietly, appearing beside her twin. "And say what?" "That we learned something, that we're trying to be better." Elise paused. "That we'd still like his help, if he's willing." They found him 20 minutes later on the 38th floor, restocking paper towels in a break room kitchenette. He looked up as they approached, still in their tournament GIs, medals hanging around their necks. "How'd it go?" he asked simply. "Good," Ava said. "Different. Better." She held up her silver medal. "I lost the finals." "To your sister?" "Yeah." "That's good. Keeps you both sharp." Ethan returned to his work, organizing supplies with the same precision he'd shown in every movement. "The tournament raised good money?" "Almost $20,000. Elise leaned against the doorframe. "Kids in Tacoma are going to get equipment, lessons, opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. That's what matters." Silence settled between them, comfortable but weighted with unspoken questions. The twins had come looking for him with speeches prepared, requests rehearsed, but standing here in this mundane break room watching him work, the speeches felt wrong, presumptuous. "The offer still stands," Ava finally said. "If you ever want to train us, teach us. We'd be grateful." Ethan considered this, hands still busy with paper towels and cleaning supplies. "What do you want to learn?" "Whatever you're willing to teach." That's not an answer. Teaching requires knowing what the student needs, what they're trying to achieve. He looked at them directly now, those weathered eyes seeing through corporate titles to the actual people underneath. "Why do you train? Both of you, really?" The question landed heavier than it should have. Ava exchanged a glance with her sister, realized they'd never actually articulated it. They trained because their father had started them training, because they'd been good at it, because winning felt good and losing felt terrible, because it was part of their identity, part of the Carter twin brand. But why did they train? I don't know, Ava admitted quietly. I thought I did, but after this morning, after the tournament, I'm not sure anymore. That's honest. Ethan nodded approval. Most people never question their motivations. They just keep doing what they've always done because stopping would mean confronting uncertainty. So what's your answer? Elise asked. Why do you train, or why did you? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, organizing his supply cart, maybe organizing his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience hard-earned. I trained because young people were going into situations where their survival depended on their skills. Every technique I taught them, every drill I ran them through, every principle I instilled, those things kept them alive, brought them home to their families. That was my why. That was what made the training matter. And now? Ava asked. Now I don't train. Haven't in 3 years. He closed the supply cabinet, locked it with a key from his belt. Don't need to anymore. No one's depending on me. No lives in the balance. Just me and my choices and floors that need cleaning. But you could still teach, Elise pressed. Different context, different purpose, but the knowledge is still there. Knowledge without purpose is just information. Ethan picked up his supply cart, prepared to move to the next floor. You want me to teach you? First figure out why you want to learn, what you're trying to achieve, who you're trying to become. Then we'll talk. He wheeled his cart toward the elevator, leaving them standing in the break room, medals around their necks, questions in their minds. As the elevator doors closed, Ava turned to her sister. Who are we trying to become? I don't know, Elise admitted, but I think we just got our first real homework assignment. They stood there a while longer, two successful women at the top of their professional game, suddenly realizing they'd been climbing a ladder without ever questioning where it led or why they were climbing it in the first place. Outside the windows, Seattle's gray afternoon was deepening toward evening, clouds rolling in from the sound, carrying the promise of rain. The building around them hummed with activity, employees finishing work, computers processing data, elevators carrying people up and down, the endless rhythm of corporate life. And somewhere in that rhythm, moving quietly through floors and hallways, a colonel who'd chosen to become invisible was offering lessons to anyone willing to see. The question haunted Ava for 3 days straight. Who was she trying to become? It seemed like such a simple thing to answer. Successful businesswoman, martial artist, leader, innovator. But every answer felt hollow the moment she examined it. Those were labels, accomplishments, external markers. They described what she did, not who she was or who she wanted to be. Thursday evening found her alone in her Belltown apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, the Seattle skyline glittering against dark water. The apartment was expensive and mostly empty. Designer furniture she'd hired someone to select, art she'd bought because galleries told her it was valuable, a home that looked like a magazine spread and felt like a hotel room. She'd lived here for 4 years and couldn't remember the last time she'd cooked a meal in the pristine kitchen or sat on the balcony to watch the sunset. Her phone buzzed. Text from Elise. Still thinking about his question? Ava typed back. Can't stop thinking about it. Same. Want to come over? I made lasagna. You made lasagna? Since when do you cook? Since I realized I've been ordering takeout every night for 2 years and couldn't remember what my kitchen looked like. Come over. We'll figure this out together. 30 minutes later, Ava was sitting at her sister's dining table. Similar apartment, different building, but warmer somehow, more lived in, eating surprisingly good lasagna and trying to articulate thoughts that kept slipping away like smoke. I think we've been living someone else's life, Elise said, pouring wine into glasses that actually matched, another recent purchase. Dad's life, his vision, his definition of success. Dad wanted us to be successful. Nothing wrong with that. But whose version of success? Elise set down the wine bottle, met her twin's eyes. We built Carter Dynamics because he always said we should start our own company. We pushed into AI logistics because he said that's where the money was. We train in martial arts because he enrolled us when we were kids. When did we actually choose any of this? Ava took a long sip of wine, feeling the question land somewhere deep and uncomfortable. We chose to keep doing it, We're adults. We could have walked away any time. Could we, though? Really? Elise pushed food around her plate. Or were we so conditioned to achieve, to win, to prove ourselves that walking away felt impossible? Like failure? The apartment was quiet except for the ambient sounds of the city beyond the windows. Traffic, distant sirens, the white noise of urban life. Ava thought about their father, about the man who'd raised them with equal parts love and impossible expectations. He'd died 2 years ago, heart attack at his desk, still working deals at 68. They'd cried at his funeral and then returned to running Carter Dynamics exactly the way he would have wanted. His legacy continued through them. But was it their legacy? Or were they just custodians of someone else's dreams? I don't know how to answer Ethan's question, Ava admitted quietly. I thought I knew who I was, CEO, black belt, winner. But those are just achievements. They're not. They're not purpose. They're not why. Maybe that's the point. Elise refilled their glasses. Maybe he's trying to get us to dig deeper, find the actual foundation underneath all the accomplishments. And if there's nothing there, if we've been building on empty ground this whole time, then we start over, build something real. Elise raised her glass. Together, like always. They drank to that uncertain promise. Two women at the top of their professional game suddenly questioning everything they'd built, wondering if success and meaning were the same thing or completely different destinations. The following Monday, Jennifer Martinez knocked on Ava's office door, looking nervous. She'd been marketing director for 3 years, had helped Carter Dynamics land major clients with campaigns that were equal parts smart and creative. But standing in the doorway of her CEO's corner office, she looked like an intern asking for a favor. Come in, Ava said, looking up from her laptop. Everything okay? Yes, ma'am. Yes, Ava. Jennifer stepped inside, closed the door. I wanted to thank you again for the tournament, for what you said before our match. It really helped. You fought well. Those points you scored were earned. That's actually why I'm here. Jennifer moved closer, still uncertain. After the tournament, I've been thinking about training more seriously. Not just the kickboxing classes I've been taking, but actual martial arts. Like committed study. And I was wondering if you knew any good schools in the area? Places that focus on real technique, not just fitness? Ava considered the question, thought about the dozens of martial arts schools in Seattle, the ones she'd visited or competed against over the years. She could recommend several, but instead she found herself asking, why do you want to train? Jennifer blinked, surprised by the question. To get better. To challenge myself. But why? What are you trying to achieve? Who are you trying to become? The words were Ethan's, but speaking them herself, Ava realized she was asking Jennifer to do the work she hadn't done yet, to articulate purpose before pursuing achievement. It felt hypocritical and necessary in equal measure. I'm not sure how to answer that. Jennifer sat down in the chair across from Ava's desk. I guess I just want to be stronger? More capable? I've always been the person who got picked last for teams, who couldn't do a pull-up in gym class. Training makes me feel like I'm taking control of that narrative. That's honest. Ava closed her laptop, gave Jennifer her full attention. And it's a valid reason. Better than mine, probably. What's your reason? Ava laughed, short and slightly bitter. I'm still figuring that out, which is embarrassing considering I've been training since I was 7. They sat in silence for a moment, CEO and director, both grappling with questions that had seemed simple until examined closely. There's someone, Ava said slowly, making a decision even as she spoke. Someone who might be able to help both of us. But I need to ask him first if he's willing. Can I get back to you? Of course. Thank you. Jennifer stood, then paused. Can I ask you something? Off the record? Sure. Do you ever feel like you're supposed to have all the answers? Like you're the CEO, you're successful, you're this black belt champion. People look at you and assume you've got everything figured out. But what if you don't? What if you're still trying to figure out basic stuff and you can't admit it because everyone expects you to be perfect? Ava felt something crack open in her chest, some sealed compartment where she'd been storing exactly that feeling for years. Every single day, she admitted. Every day I wake up feeling like an imposter who's going to get discovered, like someone's going to realize I don't actually know what I'm doing, and everything will fall apart. Really? Jennifer's voice was small, vulnerable. But you built this company. You're so confident, so capable. I'm terrified most of the time. I just hide it well. Ava smiled, sad and genuine. The confidence is performance. The capability is practice. But underneath, I'm still figuring out who I am and what I'm doing and whether any of this matters. Jennifer absorbed this, seemed to stand taller somehow, like knowing her CEO shared her doubts made those doubts less shameful. Thank you for telling me that. I thought it was just me. Never just you. We're all making it up as we go. After Jennifer left, Ava sat alone in her office, staring at the Seattle skyline, thinking about masks and performances and the difference between looking successful and being whole. She'd spent so much energy maintaining the image of confidence that she'd forgotten it was supposed to be a reflection of something real, not a substitute for it. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus Webb. Need to talk when you have a minute. About Ethan. Ava's pulse quickened. Everything okay? Nothing bad. But something you should know. My office? 10 minutes later, Ava was sitting across from Marcus in the security office, a windowless room filled with monitors showing various angles of the building, lobby, parking garage, hallways, elevators. Marcus looked uncomfortable, like he was about to violate a confidence but felt obligated to speak anyway. I've been thinking about what happened last week, Marcus began. The gym situation. And I feel like I need to tell you more about Colonel Cole, about what he actually did, what he represents. You don't have to betray his privacy, Marcus. This isn't about privacy. It's about context. Marcus pulled up something on his computer, turned the monitor so Ava could see. It showed a military training manual cover. Modern Combative Systems, a comprehensive guide to hand-to-hand combat. The author was listed as Colonel Ethan Cole, along with several other military officials. He wrote the book, Marcus said quietly. Literally, the hand-to-hand combat system used by every special operations unit in the U.S. military. He designed it. The training protocols that turned regular soldiers into elite fighters. He created them. For 23 years, he was the guy who taught the guys who taught everyone else. Ava stared at the screen, processing. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been watching him all week, the way he moves through the building, the way people don't see him, and I realized something. He's not just choosing invisibility, he's perfected it. He's applying the same discipline and skill to being a janitor that he once applied to training warriors. And that's… Marcus paused, searching for words. That's either the saddest thing I've ever seen or the most profound. I can't decide which. What do you mean? I mean, most people who retire from high-level positions, especially military positions, they either coast on their reputation or they can't let go. They consult, they write memoirs, they give speeches, they find ways to stay relevant. But Colonel Cole? He completely erased himself. Went from legend to invisible in 3 years. That takes discipline most people don't have. Or desperation, Ava said quietly. Maybe he's running from something. From his past. From guilt or trauma or… maybe. Probably. Marcus closed the manual, leaned back in his chair. I served in the Marines for 20 years, saw combat, lost friends, came home with nightmares that took years to manage. And I still wanted to talk about it, still wanted people to know what I'd done, what I'd survived. The idea of completely hiding all that? I can't imagine it. So why would he? That's what I keep asking myself. Marcus looked at the security monitors, at Ethan moving through a hallway on the 35th floor, pushing his cart, invisible to the employees walking past him. And the only answer I can come up with is that he's either healing or hiding, or maybe both at the same time. Ava watched the monitor, watched Ethan stop to pick up a piece of trash someone had dropped, watched him continue on his route without expecting recognition or thanks. There was something almost meditative about his movements, like he'd found peace in routine, in simplicity, in the absence of expectation. He asked us to figure out why we train, Ava said, why we want to learn from him, said knowledge without purpose is just information. That sounds like him. He was always big on purpose, on understanding the why behind the what. Marcus smiled slightly. In training exercises, he'd stop everything if he sensed someone was just going through motions. Make them articulate why they were learning a technique, what situation would require it, what they were protecting. He said mindless repetition created habits, but conscious practice created warriors. What's the difference? Habits break under pressure. Warriors adapt. Marcus turned to face Ava directly. You want my advice? Figure out your why. Answer his question honestly. And if you do that, if you really dig deep and find something real, I think he'll teach you. Not because you're the CEO or because you ask nicely, but because he'll see someone genuinely trying to grow. And that's the only thing that ever motivated him, helping people become better versions of themselves. Ava left the security office with more questions than answers, but at least they were the right questions. She found Elise in the executive break room, brewing coffee from the expensive machine their father had insisted they needed, something Italian that cost more than most people's monthly rent. We need to do something, Ava said without preamble. Hello to you too. Elise poured coffee into 2 cups. Do what? Answer the question, really answer it. Why do we train? Who are we trying to become? Ava accepted the coffee, barely tasted it. I talked to Marcus. He told me more about Ethan, about what he actually accomplished. And I realized we've been treating this like a game, like we're collecting a famous teacher the way we collect trophies. But it's not about that. What's it about? I don't know yet, but I think we need to figure it out together, really examine our lives, our choices, our purpose. Everything. Elise studied her twin, saw the determination there, the vulnerability underneath it. That's terrifying. I know. It might mean realizing we've been wrong about fundamental things, that we've wasted years pursuing the wrong goals. I know that too. Okay? Elise set down her coffee cup. Where do we start? They started with the company itself. That evening, after most employees had left, the twins sat in the main conference room surrounded by whiteboards and markers writing out everything Carter Dynamics represented. Revenue numbers, client lists, employee count, market position. All the external measures of success they'd been chasing. $400 million valuation, Ava read from one whiteboard. But what does that actually mean? What does it do? It means we won, Elise said. By Dad's standards, by business standards. We built something valuable. But valuable to who? For what? Ava picked up a marker, started a new section. Means more efficient, saves them money, increases their profits. So we help rich companies get richer. Pretty much. Ava stepped back, looked at what they'd written. Is that enough? Is that a purpose worth dedicating our lives to? Elise was quiet for a long time, staring at the whiteboards, at the quantified success of their shared achievement. No, she finally said. It's not. It's fine. It pays the bills. It's what we're good at. But it's not. It's not meaningful. Not really. We're not changing lives. We're not helping people who need help. We're just optimizing systems for people who are already winning. So what do? Shut down the company? Give away all our money? No, but maybe we expand what the company does, what it stands for. Elise grabbed a marker, started writing on a fresh whiteboard. What if Carter Dynamics didn't just serve Fortune 500 companies? What if we also used our technology to help nonprofits, schools, community organizations that can't afford expensive logistics software but could really use it? That's not a terrible idea. Ava moved beside her sister, started adding to the list. We could create a foundation, pro bono services for qualifying organizations. Use our profits from corporate clients to subsidize free services for community groups. Turn our technical success into social impact. Give our work meaning beyond profit. They filled 3 whiteboards with ideas, possibilities, ways to transform Carter Dynamics from just another successful tech company into something that actually mattered to people who needed help. It wasn't complete, would require planning, resources, restructuring, but it was a start, a direction, a possible answer to the question of purpose. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. The building was empty except for security and the night cleaning crew. As they packed up their notes, Ava heard the familiar squeak of a mop bucket in the hallway outside. She opened the conference room door. Ethan was there, mopping the marble floors, moving with that same methodical precision. He looked up, registered their presence, nodded politely. "Working late," he observed. "Trying to answer your question," Ava said. "The one about why we want to learn, who we're trying to become." "Make any progress?" "Some. Maybe." Elise stepped out into the hallway. "We realized our company is successful but not meaningful, so we're trying to change that. Use our resources to help people who actually need help, not just help rich companies optimize profits." Ethan continued mopping, but Ava sensed he was listening more carefully than his casual posture suggested. "That's a start?" "Just a start?" Ava felt defensive, frustrated. "We're talking about potentially restructuring our entire business model, diverting resources, taking on pro bono clients. That's significant." "It's significant to your company. What about to you, personally?" Ethan paused his mopping, leaned on the handle. "If Carter Dynamics disappeared tomorrow, if the company didn't exist, who would you be? What would you do? What would matter to you?" The question landed like a punch to the sternum, because the honest answer was terrifying. Without Carter Dynamics, without the company and the title and the structure, Ava had no idea who she was. The company had become her identity, her purpose, her entire sense of self. Remove it and she'd be… what? Nobody. Nothing. Empty space wearing expensive clothes. "I don't know," she whispered. "Neither do I," Elise admitted beside her. "That's the real question," Ethan said gently. "Not what your company should do, but who you are underneath the company. Strip away the achievements, the titles, the accomplishments. What's left? What's core? What's true?" He returned to mopping, leaving them standing in the hallway, facing an existential crisis they hadn't known they were having. The next 2 weeks were uncomfortable in ways Ava hadn't anticipated. She found herself questioning everything, every decision, every interaction, every moment of her day. Was she making choices because she genuinely wanted to, or because she was following scripts written years ago by parents and professors and society's expectations? Was she happy? Did she even know what happiness felt like? She started doing small experiments. Woke up one Saturday and didn't check her phone for 4 hours just to see if she could. Spent an evening cooking a real meal in her kitchen, following a recipe her mother had loved, surprised to discover she enjoyed the process. Went to a bookstore and bought novels instead of business books. Read stories that had nothing to do with productivity or success. Each small rebellion felt revolutionary. Elise was doing similar work. She'd started volunteering at the Tacoma Youth Athletics Foundation, the organization their tournament had raised money for, spending Saturday mornings helping kids learn basic martial arts techniques. She came back from those sessions glowing in ways Ava hadn't seen in years, talking about a 10-year-old named Marcus who'd finally mastered his front kick, about a shy girl named Tamara who'd stood up to a bully using words instead of fists. "These kids don't care that I'm a CEO," Elise said over lunch one day, picking at a salad in the company cafeteria. "They don't care about Carter Dynamics or our valuation or any of it. They just want someone to show them how to stand up straight, how to defend themselves, how to feel strong. And teaching them that matters more than any contract we've ever signed." "So what are you saying? You want to quit and become a youth martial arts instructor?" "Maybe. I don't know." Elise set down her fork. "Or maybe I want to do both. Maybe I want to figure out how to make our actual life serve our values instead of making our values serve our career." That evening, Ava found herself back on the 38th floor break room, the place where they'd last spoken with Ethan. She wasn't sure why she'd come. He wasn't scheduled to clean this floor until later, but she stood there anyway, looking at the space where he'd challenged them to dig deeper. "You look lost." She turned. Ethan had appeared in the doorway, supply cart beside him, that same quiet presence she'd overlooked for 8 months. "I am lost," Ava said. "Completely and totally lost. And I hate it. I'm supposed to be the person who has answers, who leads, who knows what she's doing. But right now I don't know anything. That's progress. How is this progress? I feel worse than I did before. Because before you were certain and wrong, now you're uncertain and looking for truth. That's the necessary first step." Ethan entered the break room, started restocking supplies. Most people never take that step. They stay comfortable in certainty, even when that certainty is built on nothing real. So what's the second step? You keep looking, keep questioning, keep stripping away the false things until you find something solid. He organized paper cups with careful precision. I did this 3 years ago. Left everything I knew, everything I was, because I realized Colonel Cole was a construction, a role I'd been playing, and underneath the role, I'd lost track of who Ethan actually was. Did you find him? The real Ethan? Still looking. He smiled slightly. But I'm closer than I was, and I'm doing work that doesn't require me to teach people how to hurt each other, which is something. Ava sat down at one of the break room tables, watched him work. There was something meditative about his movements, something peaceful in the simple completion of simple tasks. No pressure, no performance, just work that needed doing, done well. Jennifer Martinez asked me about training, Ava said. Wanted to know if I could recommend a good martial arts school. And instead of answering, I asked her your question. Why did she want to train? Who was she trying to become? What did she say? That she wanted to take control of her own narrative. Stop being the person who got picked last, who felt weak. Training made her feel strong. That's a real answer, honest, grounded in her actual experience. Ethan finished with the supplies, moved to wipe down the counter. That's someone worth teaching. What about us? Are we worth teaching? He paused, looked at her directly. I don't know yet. You're asking the right questions now, which is good, but asking isn't the same as answering. You need to do the work. Really dig into who you are and what you want and why you want it. Until you do that, anything I teach you would just be techniques without foundation. How long does that take? However long it takes. Could be weeks, could be years, could be the rest of your life. He returned to his cart, prepared to move to the next floor. But I'll tell you what. You and your sister and Jennifer, if she's interested, meet me here next Saturday morning. 6 a.m. I'll show you something. Not training, not techniques, just something to think about. What is it? You'll see. 6 a.m. Don't be late. He wheeled his cart away, leaving Ava sitting alone in the break room, wondering what she'd just agreed to, why 6 in the morning, what something to think about meant. Saturday morning arrived cold and dark, typical Seattle autumn weather with rain threatening and heavy gray clouds. Ava met Elise and Jennifer in the building lobby at 5:45, all three of them dressed in workout clothes, uncertain what to expect. Ethan appeared exactly at 6, wearing civilian clothes instead of his coveralls, simple jeans and a worn jacket, work boots that had seen serious miles. He nodded greeting, led them outside without explanation, started walking north toward Pike Place Market. They followed, confused but committed. The city was mostly empty at this hour, just early joggers and a few homeless individuals seeking shelter from the impending rain. Ethan walked with purpose, steady pace, not rushing but not dawdling either. After 20 minutes, they arrived at a small park Ava had passed 100 times but never actually entered. Inside the park, about 30 people were gathered, elderly Asian men and women, moving through slow, deliberate forms that Ava recognized as Tai Chi. They moved in synchronization without music or instruction, just shared rhythm, shared practice, shared space. This is Master Chen's group, Ethan said quietly, stopping at the edge of the practice area. They meet here every Saturday and Sunday morning, have been for 43 years. Master Chen started it after immigrating from Taiwan. He's 87 now, still teaches. They watched in silence as the group flowed through their forms, slow motion movements that looked simple but required incredible balance and control. There was something beautiful about it, something peaceful. No competition, no winners or losers, just people practicing together, supporting each other, growing incrementally. After 30 minutes, the forms concluded. The group bowed to each other, started dispersing. An elderly Chinese man with a walking stick approached them, his face weathered but his eyes sharp and bright. Ethan, he said, his accent thick but his English clear. You bring students? Just observers today, Master Chen. Wanted them to see real practice, real purpose. Master Chen studied them, Ava, Elise, Jennifer, with eyes that seemed to see through corporate facades to actual people underneath. You train martial arts? Yes, sir, Ava said. Karate. We both have black belts. Black belt is beginning, not end, Many people forget this. Master Chen gestured to the park, to where his students had been practicing. You see them? Some train 40 years, still beginners, always learning. This is Wei. Why do they come? Jennifer asked. Every Saturday and Sunday for 43 years? What keeps them practicing? Same reason flower grows towards sun. Same reason river flows to ocean, because it is nature of thing to move toward completion. Master Chen smiled. We train not to be strong over others. We train to be complete in ourselves, to be whole. This is purpose. He bowed slightly and walked away, leaning on his stick, leaving them standing in the empty park as the first drops of rain began to fall. Completion, Elise said quietly. Wholeness. That's what we're missing, isn't it? We've been training to win, to dominate, to prove ourselves, but we've never trained to be complete. Most people don't, Ethan said. Most martial arts schools sell competition and self-defense and fitness, all valid goals. But the deeper purpose, the one that makes practice sustainable for decades, is personal cultivation. Becoming more fully yourself, more integrated, more whole. Is that why you trained for 23 years? Ava asked. For wholeness? No, I trained for survival, for mission, for duty. Ethan pulled his jacket tighter against the rain. And it made me excellent at fighting but incomplete as a person. I could disable 10 opponents in under a minute, but couldn't have a conversation with my brother without arguing. Could plan complex military operations but couldn't figure out how to be happy. The training gave me skills but not wisdom. And now? Now I'm trying to learn what Master Chen's students already know. That the real training isn't in the techniques, it's in the showing up, the consistency, the choosing to grow a little bit every day, even when nobody's watching or judging or keeping score. They walked back through the rain, quiet, with their own thoughts. The city was waking up around them, coffee shops opening, traffic increasing, the endless engine of commerce and ambition starting another day. But something had shifted inside Ava, some understanding that existed below words. Purpose wasn't about achieving more, it was about becoming whole. Back at the building, as they prepared to part ways, Jennifer spoke up. I have an answer to your question, why I want to train. Ethan stopped, gave her his full attention. I want to train because I spent my whole childhood afraid, of bullies, of failure, of being picked last, of not being enough. And training makes me feel like I'm rewriting that story, like I'm becoming the person who can stand up, who can be strong, who can protect others the way nobody protected me. Jennifer's voice shook slightly. I don't care about winning tournaments or proving I'm better than anyone. I just want to stop being afraid. I want to be whole. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. That's real. That's worth working with. Next Saturday, same time. Bring workout clothes and an open mind. Really? Jennifer's face lit up. Really? You've done the hard part, being honest about what you need. The rest is just practice. He looked at the twins. You two aren't ready yet. Keep working on your question. Keep digging. When you find something real, something true, let me know. He walked away, leaving them standing in the building lobby, rain-soaked and searching, finally beginning to understand that the journey they'd started wasn't about learning to fight better. It was about learning to be better. And that journey had no shortcuts, no techniques that could replace honest self-examination, no black belt that could substitute for the hard work of becoming whole. The rejection stung more than Ava wanted to admit. She stood in the lobby long after Ethan had disappeared into the elevator, after Jennifer had left with a promise to see them later, after Elise had gone up to her apartment to change out of wet clothes. Rain streaked the glass walls, turning the city beyond into watercolor impressions, and Ava felt the weight of her own incompleteness pressing down like atmospheric pressure. Not ready yet. Keep digging. She'd spent her entire adult life being ready. Ready for Harvard. Ready for business challenges. Ready for competition. Ready to prove herself in rooms full of men who'd underestimated her. And now a janitor who happened to be a colonel was telling her she wasn't ready for something she couldn't even properly define. Her phone buzzed. Text from her father's lawyer. Something about estate paperwork that still needed signing 2 years after the funeral. She stared at the message, thought about her father, about the man who'd shaped their entire lives with his expectations and ambitions and unspoken demands for excellence. He'd been dead for 24 months, and she was still living by his rules, still measuring success by his standards, still trying to earn approval from a ghost. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe she'd been so busy trying to become who her father wanted that she'd never figured out who Ava actually was underneath the performance. She took the elevator up to her apartment, changed into dry clothes, made coffee she didn't drink. Her living room looked like a stage set. Perfect furniture, perfect lighting, perfectly empty. She decorated it the way she thought successful people decorated, buying what magazines suggested, creating the appearance of a life well lived while the actual living happened somewhere else, to someone else. Her laptop sat on the dining table, closed for once. She opened it, created a new document, stared at the blank page. Then she started writing. Not for work, not for business. Just thoughts, questions, fragments of half-formed realizations. Who am I without Carter Dynamics? Without the company, the title, the achievement? Who am I when nobody's watching, when there's no competition to win, no opponent to defeat? What do I actually want from my life? What makes me happy? What matters? The questions felt childish, like things she should have figured out in college, maybe high school. But she hadn't. She'd been too busy achieving, too focused on external validation to ever turn inward and examine what she actually wanted versus what she'd been conditioned to pursue. She wrote for 3 hours, filling pages with raw, unfiltered thoughts. Some of it was angry, rage at her father for pushing so hard, at herself for accepting that push without question. Some of it was sad, grief for the childhood she'd sacrificed to training, for the friendships she'd neglected in favor of competition, for all the small human connections she'd dismissed as distractions from success. And some of it was uncertain, admissions that she didn't know what she wanted, didn't know who she was, didn't know how to even begin answering those questions. But by the end, one truth had emerged clearly. She was tired. Tired of performing. Tired of winning. Tired of being Ava Carter, CEO and champion and daughter of impossible expectations. She wanted to be just Ava, whoever that was. Her phone rang. Elise. She answered. I can't do this alone, her twin said without preamble. This self-examination thing, this digging, I need you. I'm here. Come over. Let's figure this out together. 2 hours later, they sat in Elise's living room with wine and notebooks, having what Elise had started calling the Existential Crisis Summit. Rain hammered against the windows, Seattle weather matching their internal turbulence, and they talked with the kind of raw honesty that only twins who'd shared a womb could manage. I think I've been angry at you, Elise said, not looking at her sister. For years, and I never admitted it, maybe not even to myself. Ava set down her wine glass. Angry about what? About being a twin. About always being compared. About never being just Elise. Always being one of the Carter twins or Ava's sister or half of a matched set. Elise's voice cracked slightly. And it's not your fault. You didn't choose to be born 4 minutes before me. But I've spent my whole life competing against you, trying to prove I'm just as good, just as smart, just as capable. And I'm exhausted. The confession hung in the air between them, dangerous and necessary. I didn't know you felt that way, Ava said quietly. How could you? I never said it. I smiled and competed and pretended it was fun, this constant comparison. But it wasn't fun. It was suffocating. Elise finally looked up, eyes wet. And the worst part is, I don't even know who I'd be without you, without our rivalry, our partnership, our twin thing. My entire identity is built around being your other half. What happens if I try to be whole on my own? Ava felt something break inside her chest, some assumption she'd been carrying without examining. She thought they were happy being twins, being partners, being two halves of one achievement. She'd never considered that Elise might feel trapped by that arrangement, suffocated by the constant comparison, desperate for individual recognition. I'm sorry, Ava said. I never wanted to be someone you had to compete against. I just wanted a sister. I know. That's what makes it so unfair. You didn't do anything wrong. The world did this to us, treating us as a unit instead of individuals, always comparing, always ranking, and we internalized it, made it the foundation of our entire relationship. They sat in silence, processing, grieving for the easier relationship they thought they had, for the complexity underneath their surface harmony. Maybe that's what Ethan's trying to get us to see, Ava said eventually, that we can't answer his question until we stop answering as a unit. We need to figure out who we are separately before we can choose to be together. That's terrifying. Everything about this is terrifying. Ava refilled their wine glasses. But maybe terrifying means we're finally doing something real. The following week was strange in ways both twins struggled to articulate. They went to work, ran Carter Dynamics, attended meetings, signed contracts, but underneath the professional performance, something fundamental had shifted. They'd started seeing the company differently, seeing their roles differently, seeing themselves differently. In a board meeting that Tuesday, Ava found herself barely listening as their CFO presented quarterly projections. The numbers were good, revenue up, costs down, expansion on track. Everything her father would have celebrated, but she kept thinking about Master Chen's students in the park, practicing Tai Chi in the rain for no reason except that it made them more complete. Their practice had no quarterly projections, no expansion plans, no board to impress, just dedication to becoming more fully themselves. Ava? The CFO's voice cut through her thoughts. Did you have any thoughts on the Q4 forecast? Actually, yes. Ava straightened, making a decision in real time. I want to propose something new, a community initiative. We use our logistics technology to support nonprofits and community organizations, pro bono services for qualifying groups, schools, charities, small businesses in underserved areas. Silence around the table. The board members exchanged glances, some curious, some skeptical, some calculating the cost. That's quite a departure from our current business model, the CFO said carefully. What's the revenue projection on that initiative? There isn't one. It's not about revenue. It's about purpose, about using what we've built to actually help people who need help. That's admirable, but this is a for-profit company. Our fiduciary duty is to shareholders, to maximizing value. Our duty is to create value, Ava interrupted, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. And value doesn't only mean profit, it means impact, meaning, contribution to community. If Carter Dynamics is just another company making rich people richer, what's the point? Why do we exist? More silence. Elise was staring at her twin with something between shock and pride. I support this, Elise said. We have the resources. We have the technology. We have the opportunity to make a real difference. Let's do it. The board meeting continued, ultimately agreeing to explore the initiative with a pilot program, but the real shift had happened internally. The twins had stopped running their father's company and started considering what their company could become. That evening, Ava found herself back in the building after hours, walking familiar hallways that felt different now, like she was seeing them for the first time. She passed the gym where she'd first sparred with Ethan, past the conference room where she and Elise had filled whiteboards with questions, past the break room where Ethan had challenged them to dig deeper. She found him on the 23rd floor, cleaning offices in the accounting department. He looked up as she approached, registered her presence without surprise. Working late again, he observed. Can't seem to stop thinking. Ava leaned against a doorframe. About your question, about purpose, about who I am and who I'm trying to become. Make any progress? Maybe. I realized I've been living my father's life, his dreams, his definitions, his measures of success. And underneath all that, I don't know who Ava actually is. I don't know what I want, or what matters to me, or what would make me happy. She paused. Is that progress, or just admitting I'm lost? Both. Being lost is progress when you'd been pretending to know the way. Ethan returned to wiping down a desk. Your father, what was he like? Brilliant, demanding, impossible to satisfy. Ava smiled sadly. He loved us, I think, in his way. But his love was conditional on achievement. We earned his approval by winning, by succeeding, by being the best. And when we weren't the best, when we failed or struggled or showed weakness, he'd get this look, disappointment, maybe disgust, like we'd let him down just by being human. And you've been trying to avoid that look your entire life. Even now, even though he's dead, I'm still performing for a ghost, still trying to earn approval from someone who can't give it anymore. She laughed, bitter and sad. How pathetic is that? Not pathetic, Human. Ethan moved to the next desk, maintaining his rhythm. I did the same thing. My brother was the reason I enlisted. He joined the Marines first, wrote letters about honor and purpose, and making a difference. Made it sound noble. So I followed him, wanted to live up to his example, wanted him to be proud of me. And when he died, I lost my reason. The person I'd been performing for was gone, and I realized I'd spent 23 years trying to be the soldier my brother wanted me to be, but I'd never figured out who Ethan wanted to be. He finished the desk, straightened. That's when I retired. When I realized continuing meant living someone else's life forever. Do you regret it? The military career? No. It taught me discipline, gave me skills, showed me what I was capable of. But it also consumed me, made me into a weapon instead of a person. And at some point you have to choose. Keep being the weapon or figure out how to be human again. How do you do that? Figure out how to be human? You start small. Choose things for yourself instead of for achievement or approval. Find out what you actually like, not what you're supposed to like. Spend time with people because you enjoy their company, not because they're useful connections. Ethan picked up his cleaning supplies. You take off the armor piece by piece and see what's underneath. Sometimes you find strength. Sometimes you find wounds. Usually both. Ava watched him work, this man who'd chosen janitorial work over Pentagon offices, invisibility over recognition, simplicity over status. There was something profoundly brave about that choice, something she was only beginning to understand. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "You can ask. I might not answer." "Do you have anyone? Friends, family, people you're close to?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering whether to respond. "Not really. My parents passed years ago. My brother's gone. Most of my military friends I lost touch with when I retired. Didn't want to be Colonel Cole anymore, and that's all they knew, the role, not the person. So I left it all behind." "That sounds lonely." "It is, but it's honest." He looked at her directly. "Sometimes you have to be alone to figure out who you are. You can't discover yourself in crowds of people telling you who to be." "Is that what you're doing? Discovering yourself?" "Still trying. Some days I think I'm getting closer. Other days I feel as lost as when I started." He smiled slightly. "But at least now I'm lost by choice, not by accident. That's something." Ava left the building that night feeling both heavier and lighter. Heavier with new understanding of her own incompleteness. Lighter from finally admitting it existed. She walked home through Seattle rain, let it soak her hair and jacket, stopped being the person who hurried between buildings with umbrellas and careful planning. Just walked. Just existed. Just let the rain be rain. Saturday morning arrived and Jennifer showed up at the building at 6 a.m., nervous and excited in equal measure. Ethan met her in the gym, now dressed in simple training clothes, his military bearing more visible without the coveralls. "You came," he said, approving. "You said to. I don't break commitments." "Good. That matters in training. Showing up even when you don't feel ready, even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching." He gestured to the mat. "We're going to start simple. I'm going to teach you how to fall." Jennifer laughed, uncertain. "I already know how to fall." "Oh, you just fall." "No, you just hurt yourself. There's a difference." Ethan demonstrated, dropping from standing to the mat in a controlled roll that distributed impact across his body. He stood up easily, unharmed. Falling properly is the foundation of everything else. If you can't fall safely, you'll train afraid. And fear makes you rigid, makes you weak. For the next hour, he taught Jennifer how to fall. Forward rolls, backward rolls, side falls, break falls. She hit the mat over and over, learning to tuck her chin, protect her head, roll with momentum instead of fighting it. It was humbling, difficult, and strangely meditative. Each fall was a small letting go, a trust that the technique would protect her, that vulnerability didn't equal harm. "Why this?" Jennifer asked during a water break, breathing hard. "Why falling? Why not punches or kicks or actual fighting techniques?" "Because you need to learn that hitting the ground isn't the end. You can fall and get back up. You can be knocked down and survive. Once you know that deep in your body, you stop being so afraid of losing. And when you stop being afraid of losing, you start being free to actually learn." Ethan handed her a towel. "Most people train to avoid falling. I'm teaching you to fall well. There's power in that." They continued for another hour, and by the end, Jennifer was falling with increasing confidence, getting back up faster, trusting the technique. She left the gym exhausted and empowered, already looking forward to next Saturday, already feeling different in ways she couldn't quite name. Ava and Elise, watching from outside the gym, felt envy and recognition mix uncomfortably. Jennifer had found her answer, done her work, earned Ethan's teaching. They hadn't. Not yet. "We need to stop being twins," Elise said quietly, watching Jennifer leave. "Not stop being sisters, but stop being a unit. Stop answering questions together, making decisions together, living as one entity split between two bodies." "How do we do that?" "I don't know. But I think we need to try." Elise turned to face her sister directly. "I think we need space. Real space. Not just separate apartments in the same neighborhood. Actual distance where we're not constantly comparing, constantly mirroring, constantly defining ourselves in relation to each other." Ava felt panic rise in her chest. They'd never been apart. Not really. Different colleges had been briefly considered and immediately dismissed. Different career paths had seemed impossible. The idea of genuine separation felt like tearing herself in half, which was exactly the problem. "Okay," Ava said, voice shaking. "You're right. We need space. We need to figure out who we are as individuals. I'm thinking about taking a sabbatical. 6 months, maybe. Travel, volunteer, explore. Leave Carter Dynamics in capable hands and just be. Without the company, without you, without all the structure and expectations. Just Elise, alone, figuring her shit out." "Where would you go?" "I don't know yet. Southeast Asia, maybe. Somewhere completely different. Somewhere nobody knows who I am or what I've achieved. Where I can be nobody for a while." Ava absorbed this, processed the fear and relief competing in her chest. Fear of being alone. Relief that maybe alone was necessary. "When?" "After we get the community initiative launched. After Q4, maybe January." Elise took her sister's hand. "This isn't about leaving you. It's about finding me. And you need to do the same. Find Ava. Figure out who you are when you're not half of us." They stood together, twins contemplating separation, understanding that growth sometimes required distance, that love sometimes meant letting go. The next few weeks blurred together in a strange mix of normal work and profound change. Carter Dynamics launched its pilot community program, offering free logistics software to 5 nonprofit organizations in the Seattle area. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Organizations that had been struggling with inefficient systems, wasted resources, and coordination problems suddenly had access to enterprise-level technology that transformed their operations. Ava personally worked with a homeless services coalition, helping them optimize their resource distribution, coordinate between shelters, and track available beds in real time. It was detail work, unglamorous and time-consuming, and it mattered more than any corporate contract she'd ever signed. She sat in meetings with social workers who were exhausted and underfunded and deeply committed, who thanked her with tears in their eyes for help they'd needed for years. One woman, a shelter director named Patricia, hugged Ava after their final implementation meeting. "You have no idea what this means. Last week we had a family sleeping in their car because we couldn't coordinate fast enough to find them a bed. With this system, that won't happen again. You're saving lives, actual lives." Ava drove home that evening and cried in her car, big, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep and previously sealed. She'd spent her entire career chasing revenue and valuation and market position, and none of it had ever made anyone cry from gratitude. None of it had saved lives. None of it had mattered like this mattered. She texted Ethan from the parking garage. "I think I found part of my answer." His response came 5 minutes later. "Good. Keep looking. There's more." Elise was having similar revelations working with the Tacoma Youth Athletics Foundation. She'd expanded from Saturday morning volunteering to 2 evenings a week, teaching basic martial arts to kids who reminded her painfully of her younger self. Desperate to prove themselves, hungry for approval, measuring self-worth through achievement and competition. There was one boy in particular, Marcus, named after the security chief who'd connected them with the foundation. He was 12, small for his age, angry in the way kids get when the world keeps hurting them. He'd been bouncing between foster homes, acting out, getting into fights. The foundation was his last chance before juvenile detention. Elise worked with him one-on-one after class one evening, teaching him the same falling techniques Ethan had taught Jennifer. Marcus fought it at first, tried to stay rigid, tried to avoid hitting the mat because falling felt like losing, like one more thing he couldn't control. "You're fighting the fall," Elise told him. "You're so scared of hitting the ground that you're making it hurt worse." "I'm not scared," Marcus snapped, all adolescent defiance. "Yeah, you are, and that's okay, but fear makes you stiff, and stiff breaks. You need to learn to be flexible, to roll with things, to fall and get back up." "Why? So I can be a better punching bag? So people can knock me down easier?" "No. So you can stop being afraid of being knocked down. So you can know, deep in your bones, that falling isn't the end. You can hit the ground and get back up, over and over, forever if you need to." Elise demonstrated, falling hard and rising smoothly. The ground isn't your enemy. Fear is, and you beat fear by proving it wrong. Something shifted in Marcus's face. He tried again, this time relaxing slightly, letting the technique work. He fell better, got up faster, fell again, rose again. By the end of the session, he was almost smiling. "This is weird," he said. "I thought martial arts was about not getting hit, but you're teaching me to get hit better. I'm teaching you resilience, how to take damage and keep going. That's more valuable than never getting hurt." Elise handed him water. "You're going to fall a lot in life, Marcus. We all do. The question isn't whether you'll fall, it's whether you'll get back up." He nodded, drinking water, processing. As he left, he turned back. "Hey, Miss Carter. Thanks for not giving up on me. Most people do." "I won't," Elise promised. "Keep showing up. Keep trying. That's all I ask." After he left, she sat alone in the empty practice space, understanding something fundamental. She'd been teaching Marcus, but really she'd been teaching herself. About resilience, about falling and rising, about the fact that being knocked down wasn't failure, staying down was. That night, the twins met for dinner at a quiet restaurant in Capitol Hill, seated at a corner table away from crowds. They'd been seeing less of each other lately, creating that necessary space, learning to exist independently. It felt strange and necessary in equal measure. "I got invited to speak at a conference," Elise said, picking at her salmon. "In Singapore. Technology and social impact. They want both of us, obviously, but I told them just me this time." "That's great. You should go." "You're not upset about not being invited as a package deal?" "Honestly, I'm relieved," Ava smiled. "I'm tired of being a match set. I want you to have things that are just yours, and I want things that are just mine, even if those things are conference speeches in Singapore." "I'm scared," Elise admitted, "of going alone, of representing the company alone, of being just Elise without Ava beside me." "You'll be amazing. You don't need me to be amazing. I've always had you, though, since before birth. You're my original safety net. And maybe that's been holding us both back. Maybe we've been so comfortable having each other that we never pushed ourselves to be fully independent." Ava reached across the table, took her sister's hand. "I love you. I'll always love you. But I think we need to learn to love ourselves separately before we can be healthy together." Elise squeezed her hand, blinking back tears. "When did we get so wise? When a janitor made us question everything we thought we knew about ourselves." They laughed, sad and genuine, understanding that they were at a turning point, that the relationship that had defined their entire lives was evolving into something different, something healthier, something that allowed them both to be whole individuals instead of incomplete halves. 2 weeks later, Ava found herself back on the 38th floor break room late at night, the space where she'd had so many conversations with Ethan. He wasn't scheduled to clean this floor until morning, but she went anyway, drawn by the quiet, by the familiarity, by the sense that this space had become sacred in its own strange way. She sat at one of the tables, pulled out a notebook, started writing. Not business plans or strategic initiatives, just a letter to her father, words she'd never been able to say when he was alive. "Dad, I'm angry at you. For pushing so hard, for making love conditional on achievement, for teaching me that my value was measured in trophies and contracts and other people's approval. for never just letting me be your daughter without also being your legacy. But I'm also grateful, because your impossible expectations made me strong, made me capable, made me someone who could build a multi-million-dollar company before 35. The problem is, I don't know if I wanted to build that company. I don't know if I wanted any of the things I achieved. I was too busy achieving them to ask if they mattered. I'm trying to figure that out now. Trying to separate your dreams from my own. Trying to discover who Ava is underneath the performance, underneath the armor, underneath all the ways I learned to be impressive instead of real. I think you would have hated this process. You would have called it navel-gazing, self-indulgence, weakness. But I'm doing it anyway, because I'd rather be real and uncertain than successful and hollow. I miss you. I'm angry at you. I'm grateful to you. I'm trying to forgive you and myself and move forward into whoever I'm supposed to become. She signed it, not with her name but with the date, like she was marking time, marking progress, marking this moment of honest reckoning. The letter would never be sent, couldn't be sent, but writing it felt like exorcism, like releasing something she'd been carrying for years. "You're here late," she looked up. Ethan stood in the doorway, supply cart beside him, wearing his coveralls again, back in his chosen uniform of invisibility. "I needed a quiet place to think," Ava said. "Looks like more than thinking." He nodded toward the notebook. "Writing a letter to my father, trying to make peace with his ghost. That's important work." Ethan entered the break room, started his routine tasks. "How's it going?" "Painful. Necessary. I'm realizing how much of my life was about him, earning his approval, avoiding his disappointment, living up to his standards. And now that he's gone, I'm left with this structure built on a foundation that doesn't exist anymore. Everything's shaking." "Good. Good? If it's shaking, that means it wasn't solid. Better to discover that now and rebuild properly than to keep living in a structure built on air." Ethan restocked paper towels with his characteristic precision. "You asked me once why I trained for 23 years, and I told you it was for survival, for mission, for duty. But that wasn't the whole truth." Ava closed her notebook, gave him full attention. "I trained because I was afraid," Ethan continued. "Afraid of being weak, afraid of failing the people who depended on me, afraid of not being enough. And training gave me control over that fear, made me stronger, faster, more capable. But it didn't make me less afraid. It just gave me more sophisticated ways to avoid facing the real question, which was whether I was worth anything beyond what I could do for others, whether Ethan Cole had value as a person or only as a soldier, a trainer, a weapon." He finished with the paper towels, moved to wipe down surfaces. "When my brother died, I lost the person I'd been performing for. And without that audience, without that purpose, I had to face the fact that I'd never built an identity that stood on its own. I was all role, no self. Is that why you became a janitor, to strip away the role?" "Partly, but also because cleaning is real. It's honest work that makes spaces better for people. Nobody thanks you for it, nobody celebrates it, but it matters. And doing it well, doing it with care and precision, that taught me I could have value even when nobody was watching, even when there was no applause, even when the work itself was the only reward." Have you found it? Yourself underneath the role? Getting closer. Some days I know exactly who I am. Other days I'm still looking, but the difference now is I'm looking for me, not for what other people need me to be. He straightened, met her eyes directly. "You asked me to train you and your sister, to teach you, and I said you weren't ready. Do you know why? Because we didn't have a real answer about why we wanted to learn. Because you were still performing, still trying to collect achievements like trophies. A famous teacher would have been one more thing to list, one more way to prove you were impressive. And I don't teach impressive. I teach people who are trying to become whole." Ava felt that land, felt it true and uncomfortable. "And now? Now I think you might be ready. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're asking real questions, because you're willing to shake the structure and see what's solid underneath, because you're choosing honesty over achievement." He picked up his cleaning supplies, prepared to move to the next room. "If you still want to learn, meet me in the gym Saturday morning, 6 a.m. Bring your sister if she's ready too. We'll start simple. Falling and rising, the foundation of everything else. That's what you taught Jennifer. It's what everyone needs to learn first, how to fall without breaking, how to take damage and keep going, how to be resilient instead of rigid. He paused in the doorway. Martial arts isn't about learning to fight, Ava. It's about learning to live fully despite knowing you'll get hurt. That's the real lesson. Everything else is just technique. He left, wheeling his cart away, leaving Ava sitting in the break room with her letter to her father and the realization that she'd been fighting the wrong battles her entire life. She'd been trying to never fall, never fail, never show weakness, when really the strength was in falling well and getting back up. Saturday morning came cold and clear. Seattle winter settling in with frost on windows and breath visible in morning air. Ava and Elise met in the building lobby at 5:45, both dressed for training, both nervous for different reasons. This felt significant somehow, like they were crossing a threshold from one version of themselves into another. Ethan met them in the gym at exactly 6, punctual as always, wearing simple training clothes that had clearly seen years of use. He studied them for a moment, seeing something he apparently approved of, and nodded. "You came together," he observed. "Is that wrong?" Elise asked. "Should we have come separately?" "No, you're sisters, that's important. The goal isn't to destroy your connection, it's to make sure each of you is whole within that connection." He gestured to the mat. "Today we start with falling, the foundation of everything else. Sound familiar, Jennifer?" Jennifer emerged from the corner where she'd been stretching, smiled at the twins. "Hey, welcome to falling practice. It's humbling and weird and kind of amazing." "You're training together?" Ava asked. "Ethan thought it would be good for me to help teach what I've learned. Says teaching is the best way to really understand something." Jennifer moved to the center of the mat. "Plus, I like the idea of helping the CEOs learn to fall. Feels full circle." For the next hour, Ethan taught them what he'd taught Jennifer: how to tuck, how to roll, how to distribute impact, how to trust the technique. The twins fell over and over, sometimes gracefully, often awkwardly, learning to let go of control just enough to stay safe. Learning that hitting the ground wasn't the end. Learning that they could fall and rise, forever if necessary. By the end of the session, all 3 women were exhausted, sweating, and strangely exhilarated. They'd spent an hour doing nothing but falling, and somehow it felt like the most honest training they'd ever done. "Why does this feel so important?" Elise asked, lying on the mat, staring at the ceiling. "We just fell down 100 times. That's not exciting, but it feels profound." "Because you learned you can survive falling, and once you know that, really know it in your body, you stop being so afraid. And when you stop being afraid, you start being free." Ethan sat down beside them, comfortable on the floor. Most people spend their lives trying to never fall. But fall is inevitable. So the question becomes, will you fall afraid and rigid and break, or will you fall skilled and flexible and rise? "I want to rise," Jennifer said quietly. "I've been falling my whole life, just badly, getting hurt, staying down, being afraid. I want to fall well." "You're learning. It takes time." Ethan looked at the twins. "What about you two? Why are you here? Really?" Ava sat up, thought about her answer, chose honesty over performance. "I'm tired of being impressive. I want to be real. I want to figure out who I am underneath all the achievements and expectations and roles I've been playing. And I think learning to fall is learning to be vulnerable. Learning that I don't have to be perfect or invincible or always in control. I can be human, and that can be enough." "That's real," Ethan said. "Elise? I want to be whole by myself, not half of a twin unit, not my father's daughter, not a CEO or a champion, just Elise, complete and individual, and okay with being alone when I need to be." She glanced at her sister. "I love Ava, but I can't keep defining myself in relation to her. I need to learn who I am independently, and falling feels like letting go of needing her to catch me every time." Ethan was quiet, considering their answers, apparently finding them sufficient. "Okay, we'll keep training. Every Saturday, 6 a.m., unless I tell you otherwise. We'll build from here. Falling, then rolling, then basic techniques, then more complex skills. But the foundation is always this: learning to fall well, learning to be resilient, learning that getting knocked down isn't failure. How long does it take, Jennifer asked, to really learn this? Lifetime, maybe several. He smiled. But you'll see progress quickly. Feel different within weeks. What we're really doing isn't learning techniques. It's reconditioning your relationship with challenge, with difficulty, with failure. Teaching your body and mind that struggle is normal, damage is survivable, falling is just part of rising. They trained together every Saturday after that, 3 women and 1 teacher, building something that wasn't about competition or achievement, but about becoming more complete versions of themselves. Sometimes Marcus Webb would stop by, watching from the doorway, slowly accepting that the colonel he'd revered in the military was now teaching CEOs to fall on mats. Sometimes other employees would peek in, curious about what the twins were doing at 6 a.m. on Saturdays, wondering why their successful bosses were learning to hit the ground. But inside the gym, none of that mattered. There was only the practice, the falling and rising, the slow, patient work of becoming whole. 3 months passed in a rhythm of falling and rising, both literal and metaphorical. The Saturday morning sessions became sacred time for all 3 women, a weekly anchor point where they could set aside their corporate identities and just be students learning fundamental lessons about resilience and vulnerability. The gym became a sanctuary. The early morning hours before the building woke up a pocket of time where performance wasn't required and honest struggle was not only acceptable, but encouraged. Ethan proved to be unlike any instructor the twins had ever encountered. He rarely demonstrated his own abilities beyond basic technique, never showed off or reminded them of his credentials. Instead, he focused entirely on their development, watching with eyes that caught every subtle shift in balance, every moment of hesitation, every breakthrough, however small. He spoke sparingly, his feedback surgical in its precision. A word here, a gentle correction there, mostly just presence and attention that made them feel truly seen for the first time in their lives. By December, they'd progressed beyond simple falling to more complex movements, rolling techniques that built on the foundation of falling safely, basic strikes that emphasized control over power, defensive movements that taught timing and patience. But always, Ethan brought them back to the fundamentals when he sensed they were getting ahead of themselves, when achievement orientation started creeping back into their practice. "You're competing again," he told Ava one Saturday morning, stopping her mid-technique. "I can see it. You're trying to do it perfectly, trying to impress. Why?" Ava froze, caught in the act of old patterns. "I just want to do it right." There's a difference between doing it right and proving you can do it right. One is about learning. The other is about performing. Ethan moved closer, his voice gentle but firm. "I don't need you to impress me. I need you to be honest about where you are right now. If you're struggling, show me the struggle. If you're uncertain, show me the uncertainty. That's how we work with what's real instead of what you wish was real." The words landed like they always did with Ethan, uncomfortable and necessary. Ava tried the technique again, this time allowing herself to actually feel where she was uncertain, where her body didn't quite understand the movement. It was messier, less impressive, and somehow more truthful. "Better," Ethan said. "That's real practice. The other was just performance." Elise was having her own reckonings. The Singapore conference had gone well. She'd spoken about Carter Dynamics Community Initiative to an audience of tech leaders, and for the first time she'd stood on a stage alone, without Ava beside her, and felt complete rather than incomplete. The applause had been gratifying, but more important was the realization that she could exist independently, could represent herself and their work without needing her twin as validation or support. She'd returned from Singapore different, more settled in herself, and immediately started planning her sabbatical. 6 months traveling through Southeast Asia, volunteering with educational organizations, teaching martial arts to kids in communities that couldn't afford formal instruction. No corporate identity, no CEO title, just Elise Carter trying to be useful and figure out who she was when stripped of all external markers of success. "I'm scared," she admitted to Ava over coffee one morning in early January, her departure date looming just 2 weeks away. "Terrified, actually. I've never been alone like this. Never been away from you, from the company, from everything familiar." "That's how you know it's the right thing to do," Ava said, her own fear carefully hidden. She was terrified too, of running Carter dynamics without her twin, of being truly alone for the first time, of discovering whether she could be whole without the other half of their matched set. But Elise needed to hear confidence, needed permission to go, needed to know Ava would be okay without her. You're ready. You've been ready. You just needed to believe it. What about you? Are you ready for me to leave? No, but I need to be ready. I need to learn to stand alone too. Ava reached across the table, took her sister's hand. We're not abandoning each other. We're just finally learning to be individuals so that when we come back together, we're choosing it instead of being trapped by it. When did we get so healthy? Elise laughed, tears in her eyes. When we started paying attention to the janitor. The Saturday before Elise's departure, Ethan gathered all 3 women in the gym for what he called a checkpoint session. They sat in a circle on the mat, no training clothes yet, just 4 people in a space that had become meaningful over months of shared practice. You've been training for 3 months, Ethan began, his voice carrying that quiet authority they'd come to respect. And I want to acknowledge your progress. Jennifer, you've transformed from someone afraid of her own shadow to someone who can fall and rise with genuine confidence. You showed up every single Saturday, did the work, stayed honest about your struggles. That's warrior spirit, not in the fighting sense, but in the sense of facing yourself truthfully. Jennifer ducked her head, embarrassed and proud in equal measure. She had changed, visible even in how she carried herself through the building during work hours. More upright, more present, more willing to speak up in meetings, to take risks, to stop apologizing for existing. Ava, you've been learning to let go of performance, Ethan continued. That's harder than it sounds. You've spent your entire life being impressive, and choosing to be real instead, that takes courage. You still slip sometimes, still try to prove instead of learn, but you're catching yourself faster. That's growth. Ava nodded, feeling the truth of it, feeling the ways she'd started to soften, to allow imperfection, to stop measuring every moment against impossible standards. And Elise, you've been learning to be separate, to exist independently without constantly checking whether you're measuring up to your twin. You're about to test that learning in a profound way, and I think you're ready. But it's going to be hard. Being alone with yourself always is. I know, Elise said quietly, but I need to do it. You do, and what you learn during these 6 months will change everything. Your relationship with Ava, with your work, with yourself. Pay attention, write things down. Don't rush the process. Ethan paused, looked at all 3 of them. I want to tell you something I don't usually talk about why I really left the military. The gym went completely silent. In 3 months of training, Ethan had shared pieces of his history, but never the full truth, never the complete story of why a decorated colonel had become a janitor. My brother died in Kandahar, Ethan said, his voice steady but weighted with old grief. I told you that. What I didn't tell you is that I trained the unit he was embedded with. I designed the combatives program they used. I personally instructed their hand-to-hand instructor. And when Daniel was killed by an IED, when they brought him home in a flag-draped coffin, I stood at his funeral and realized that all my training, all my expertise, all my legendary skills had been completely useless. Couldn't protect him, couldn't save him, couldn't change anything that mattered. He stopped, took a breath, continued. I had a breakdown. Not dramatic. I didn't fall apart publicly or get discharged for mental health reasons. But internally, everything collapsed. Every assumption I'd been carrying about purpose and meaning and the value of what I did just dissolved. And I started questioning everything. Was I helping people, or was I just creating more efficient ways to destroy each other? Was I building anything good, or was I just a weapon maker who'd convinced myself I was serving some higher purpose? The 3 women sat frozen, barely breathing, witnessing something vulnerable and true. I finished my commitment because I'm not a quitter. But the day I hit my retirement date, I walked away from everything. Turned down the Pentagon job, turned down consulting offers, turned down book deals and speaking circuits and all the ways I could have monetized my reputation. I wanted to disappear, wanted to be nobody for a while, wanted to find out who I was when I wasn't Colonel Cole, when nobody needed me to be anything except present. Is that why you became a janitor? Jennifer asked softly. Partly. But also because I needed work that was simple and honest. Where the value was obvious, dirty floor becomes clean floor. No moral complexity, no wondering if I'm helping or hurting, just clear improvement that anyone could see. And I needed to be invisible for a while. Needed to stop being the person everyone looked at and started being the person nobody noticed. Because when you're invisible, you can finally see yourself without all the mirrors that society holds up. Did it work? Ava asked. Did you find yourself? Some days yes, some days no. It's not a destination, it's a practice. Just like falling and rising is a practice. You keep doing it, keep refining, keep adjusting. And slowly over time, you become more integrated, more whole, more honest. He smiled slightly. And then, 3 months ago, 2 CEOs challenged me to a sparring match, and I had to decide whether to stay invisible or step into teaching again. Whether I'd learned enough to share without falling back into old patterns. Whether I could help people grow without making it about my ego or my reputation. Why did you say yes? Elise asked. Because you asked the right question eventually. Not, will you train us, but who are we trying to become? That question told me you were ready for real teaching, not just technique collection. And because I realized that hiding my knowledge forever wasn't healing, it was just a different kind of fear. I can teach without being Colonel Cole. I can share what I know without making it my identity. That's the integration I've been working toward. They sat with that for a long moment, understanding that they were witnessing something rare, a teacher being as vulnerable with his students as he asked them to be with themselves. It transformed the dynamic, made the space between them more level, more mutual, more real. So what happens now? Jennifer asked. Elise is leaving for 6 months. Do we keep training? You and Ava will keep training, Ethan said. Same time, same place. Elise will train wherever she is, with whoever she finds, learning from different perspectives. And when she comes back, we'll see how all of you have grown. What if we haven't grown? Ava asked, voicing the fear underneath everything. What if 6 months from now we're exactly the same, still struggling with the same issues, still incomplete? Then you keep practicing. That's the point. It's not about reaching some final destination where you're perfectly complete and never have to work on yourself again. It's about showing up for the practice, being honest about where you are, and choosing to grow incrementally forever. Some weeks you'll feel transformed. Other weeks you'll feel like you're back at the beginning. That's normal. That's the process. Elise left for Thailand 2 weeks later on a rainy January morning, Ava driving her to the airport in pre-dawn darkness that matched the emotional weather between them. They'd said their goodbyes multiple times already, but kept finding more things to say, more reassurances to offer, more expressions of love and fear and hope. Promise me you'll be okay, Elise said in the departure terminal, holding her boarding pass like a talisman. I promise to try. That's all I can offer. And promise you won't work yourself to death running the company alone. I've got good people. The executive team is solid, and honestly, maybe running things without you will force me to finally delegate, to trust others, to stop controlling every detail. Ava hugged her twin fiercely. Just promise me you'll come back. Eventually. When you're ready. I promise. 6 months. Maybe a little longer if I need it, but I'll come back, and we'll figure out what our relationship looks like when we're both whole. Elise pulled away, wiping tears. I love you. Always have. Always will. But I need to learn to love me, too. I know. Go. Be brave. Fall down a lot and get back up. Ava watched her twin walk through security, watched until Elise disappeared into the crowd of travelers, and then drove back to Seattle feeling hollowed out and strangely free. She was alone. Truly alone for the first time in her life. And she had 6 months to figure out who Ava Carter was when Elise wasn't there to complete the picture. The following Saturday, Ava showed up at the gym at 6 a.m. to find just Jennifer waiting, both of them adjusting to the absence of the third member of their practice group. Ethan arrived exactly on time, acknowledged the change without dwelling on it, and started their session with the same focus he always brought. Today we work on presence, he said. Not techniques, just being fully here. Jennifer, you have a tendency to live in your head, narrating your movements instead of feeling them. Ava, you have a tendency to split your attention, always planning 3 moves ahead instead of executing the current one. Today we practice being exactly where you are, exactly when you're there. He had them stand in basic stance for 10 minutes. Just stand, feeling their weight distribution, their breathing, the small adjustments their bodies made to maintain balance. It was excruciating, boring, and strangely profound. Ava's mind raced through to-do lists, worries about the company, questions about whether Elise's flight had landed safely. But every time she noticed her attention drifting, she brought it back. Feet, floor, breath, present moment. After 10 minutes, her legs were shaking from the simple act of standing still, of being present without distraction. When Ethan finally released them, she felt both exhausted and weirdly energized, like she'd done profound work despite not moving. That's the practice, Ethan said, being where you are. Most people spend their lives everywhere except the present moment, living in past regrets or future anxieties, never actually here. Martial arts at its best is training in presence. You can't fight effectively while worrying about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. You have to be exactly here, exactly now. Is that how you fought? Jennifer asked. Completely present? When I was at my best, yes. No thought, no hesitation, just response. Body moving before mind could interfere. That's the state we're working toward, not just in fighting, but in living. Being so present, so integrated, that you respond authentically instead of reactively. They trained for another hour, working on techniques that required absolute presence, timing-based drills where a moment of distraction meant failure, balance exercises where mental drift meant falling. By the end, both women were drenched in sweat and strangely peaceful, like they'd meditated for hours despite the physical intensity. As they packed up, Ava found herself lingering, not quite ready to leave the sanctuary of the gym, not quite ready to face her empty apartment and the long day of running a company alone. You're worried about her, Ethan observed, appearing beside her with a towel. Is it that obvious? You keep looking at your phone, checking for messages, wanting confirmation she's okay. She's my twin. We've never been apart like this. What if something happens? What if she needs me and I'm not there? Then she'll handle it, or not handle it, and either way, she'll learn something. Ethan sat on the edge of the mat, gestured for Ava to join him. You're acting like being needed is the same as being valuable. But what if your real value to Elise isn't in being available for rescue? What if it's in trusting her enough to struggle, to fail, to figure things out without you? That feels like abandonment. It's the opposite of abandonment. Abandonment is leaving someone who can't handle being alone. Trust is letting someone be alone because you believe they can handle it. There's a profound difference. Ava absorbed that, felt the truth and challenge of it. She'd been defining their relationship through mutual dependency, through being each other's constant support system. But maybe real love was trusting Elise to be okay without her, believing in her twin's capability instead of her neediness. What if I can't handle being alone? Ava asked quietly. What if I'm the one who's not ready for this? Then you practice, just like everything else. You show up for your life. You notice when you're spiraling into anxiety. You bring yourself back to the present moment, over and over. That's the work. February came with Seattle's typical gray dampness, and Ava threw herself into both Carter dynamics and her personal transformation with equal intensity. She expanded the community initiative, adding 10 more nonprofit partners and creating a fellowship program where Carter Dynamics employees could spend 20% of their work time on pro bono projects. The board was skeptical about the business case, but Ava held firm, arguing that company culture and employee satisfaction were forms of value that didn't show up on quarterly reports. She also started therapy, something she'd always dismissed as self-indulgent, but now recognized as necessary. Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychologist specializing in high-achieving individuals, helped her unpack decades of conditioning, years of measuring self-worth through external validation, lifetimes of performing instead of being. You're grieving, Dr. Chen told her during their 4th session, after Ava had spent 50 minutes talking about feeling empty despite having everything she'd always worked for. Grieving the life you thought you wanted, the person you thought you were, the future you'd imagined. That's real grief, even if what you're grieving wasn't actually good for you. How do I stop grieving? You don't stop it. You move through it. You let yourself feel the loss, acknowledge what you're leaving behind, and slowly start building something new, something real instead of performed. Ava cried in that session, big ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep and previously sealed. She cried for the childhood she'd sacrificed to achievement, for the relationships she'd neglected in favor of competition, for the version of herself that had never gotten to just be a kid without constantly proving her worth. Dr. Chen handed her tissues and held space for the grief, not trying to fix it or rush it, just witnessing it with compassion. Saturday mornings remained her anchor. She and Jennifer trained with Ethan, learning progressively more complex techniques but always returning to the fundamentals of presence, resilience, integration. Marcus Webb started joining them occasionally, the former Marine finding something valuable in training alongside the women and letting go of his military rigidity and learning Ethan's more fluid, adaptive approach. "You taught me to fight one way in the Marines," Marcus told Ethan during a water break. "All aggression, all domination. Get in first, hit hardest, overwhelm the opponent. It worked in combat, but it doesn't work in life. I've been trying to live that way. Aggressive, dominant, overwhelming, and it's destroying my marriage, my relationships with my kids, everything outside work." "That's the limitation of training people only for combat," Ethan said. "You create warriors who can't turn off warrior mode, who treat every interaction like a fight, every person like a potential threat." I contributed to that. Spent 23 years teaching people to be weapons. Now I'm trying to teach something different. What? How to be strong without being rigid, capable without being aggressive, present without being threatening. How to bring warrior discipline to peaceful life instead of bringing combat mentality to civilian contexts. Can you teach me that? I can guide you through the practice, but you have to do the work of unlearning, of letting go of old patterns, of being willing to be vulnerable instead of always armored. That's harder than learning to fight ever was. Marcus joined their Saturday sessions after that, adding a fourth member to their practice group, and Ava found herself grateful for his presence. He was further ahead in some ways, already aware of his patterns, already committed to change, and further behind in others, carrying trauma and conditioning that would take years to unwind. Watching his struggle helped her recognize her own, made her feel less alone in the difficult work of transformation. In March, Elisa's emails from Thailand became less frequent but more substantial. She was volunteering at a school in Chiang Mai, teaching English and basic self-defense to kids from hill tribe communities. The work was exhausting and poorly paid and more meaningful than anything she'd ever done. "I taught a girl named Fern how to do a proper front kick today," one email read. "She's 9 years old, barely comes up to my waist, and she's been getting bullied by older boys who think girls shouldn't learn to fight."